All right, the P and Z meeting is now in session. Just a couple of reminders, there's a lot of people here to speak, and there's one issue that there's gonna be quite a few people speaking on. We're gonna try to move it along as best we can. If everyone is speaking on that issue and they're all basically saying the same thing, that they're opposed to it, please don't repeat what someone else has spoken and try to move it along. We have a lot to do, and understand everyone wants to speak, so we'll try to get through the speakers as best we can. If you want to speak, you need to have signed up once this meeting starts. Would really not like to have, in the middle of the meeting, someone decide they want to speak and go out and fill out a form. So if you want to speak on an issue, now's the time to go out there and fill out a speaker request form and get it in. So the first agenda on the meeting today is 1A, approval of minutes from the April 7th, 2022 regular meeting. Commissioners, have you reviewed? Oh, wait a minute, before we do that, we have a new member. We have a new member of P&Z. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Tabor McMillan. Glad to be here. Been here in Kerrville for 4 years now, and excited to be getting involved here.
Thank you very much for your service. I'm going to tell you what I told Kevin and told Abram, and we had one other guy that's not here tonight. I'm glad you guys are getting into what you're getting into. Thank you for your service. Okay, now we can move forward.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the minutes are approved. Now we're going to go to item 2A on the agenda, which is the final plat for 534 Industrial Park. Drew?
This is a final plat for 17.046 acres of land, establishing lots 1 through 8, block 1, new county block, and being a portion of the Samuel L. Wallace survey number 112, abstract 360, for the 534 Industrial Park. Let me get that pulled up here. It's located on the loop near the landfill and Third Creek. Preliminary plat came to the commission just a couple months ago. Thank you. Just a second, let me get it to catch up here. Do have one condition, that prior to the recording of the final plat, the engineering approval of the installed public improvements or to provide financial guarantee for said improvements must be in the engineering office prior to recording of the plat. So after you guys have approved it, they'll go build streets, water, and sewer, and any drainage infrastructure, and then that plat will be recorded. Staff recommends for your approval with that condition.
This is the final time we're going to look at this. We've looked at this before. Does anyone have any additional questions or any concern? Is there someone here representing them?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so does anyone have any, before we do this final plat, does anyone have any questions? We reviewed this already twice, so if no one has any further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the final plat as presented on the 17 acres.
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve. We have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. So the final plat is approved. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to 2B, final plat, Mystic Ridge Estates subdivision, case 2022-024. Drew?
The final plat being 537.45 acres out of a 697.855 acres. Tract comprised of Tract A, Tract B, Tract 2, and Tract C as described in the special warranty deed with the vendor's lien to Jimmy Branch and Jennifer Branch dated August 6, 2021, as recorded in document number 21-07159 of the official public records of Kerr County, Texas, being all parts of the following surveys: HEWT Railroad County or Company Survey Number 2, Abstract 1505. HE&WT Railroad Company Survey Number 1426, Abstract 1450. HE&WT Railroad Company Survey Number 1426, Abstract 1927. HE&WT Railroad Company Survey 1425, Abstract Number 687. The Burton-Mikan Survey Number 675, Abstract 261. And the Samuel Wallace Survey Number 113, Abstract 347. This is a pretty large plat. We'll roll through a couple pages here. Here's the location of the plat outside, or to the east of Loop 534, and it does have access on Spur 100. This is outside the city limits, mostly within the ETJ. There's the overall layout of these lots. These are all roughly about 20-acre lots. There's the one page of the plat. There's the access on Spur 100 in the lower right-hand corner. There's the other page. The staff recommends the plat for approval.
We've reviewed this before as well. Is there any, I know we've talked about this before, impact on, is this septic?
Yes, this will be well and septic because it is outside the city limits.
And this is private roads or,
Public county roads.
okay,
Again, their primary access can be off Spur 100. They did leave a connector. There's an existing access easement on the adjacent property here that goes to Cypress Creek. And they did provide an access easement should that ever become a county road for any reason. This will go through county approval as well because they are accepting those county roads. They did leave a remainder tract based on the preliminary that was down here along this floodplain and this little piece that comes up towards Cypress Creek and Loop 534. That will be a remainder. They'll do that phase at a later date.
Has the county approved this?
Don't believe the county's approved it yet. I think they were bringing it here first and then to the county.
county maintained roads, is that what this is gonna be?
That's correct.
Anybody have any questions about this? Any comments, concerns? All right, if there are no questions or concerns, I would entertain a motion to approve the final plat for Mystic Ridge Estate subdivision.
To approve.
We have a motion to approve. Can we have a second?
Second?
All right, we have a motion to approve, and we have a second. All in favor, raise your hand, please. All right, the motion passes unanimously. We're going to move into the public hearing and consideration phase. Item 3A, a conditional use permit for short-term rental, 916 Prescott Street. Resolution to allow conditional use permit for short-term rental on part of Lot 5 and Lot 6. You want to take us through this, Drew, before we open the public hearing?
Yes, sir. Again, this is resolution for conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 916 Prescott Street. This is in accordance with the Kerrville 2050 plan and zoning policies, as it is a listed conditional use permit. And they are requesting the CUP with, from my bedroom count here. They've got enough 4 bedrooms, so they are providing 5 off-street parking spaces.
Just, let me interrupt you a second. If there aren't seats here, you guys can sit out in the lobby and you can hear.
We're on for this ticket item.
Oh, you're on for this?
Sorry, that's the
Okay,
applicant.
great. So, sorry, Drew, go ahead.
Here's the map of the overall city that we've been keeping up to date. Here's the location of the property there on Prescott. And there's the map zoomed into this area. There is another one at the other end of Prescott, and then a few on Tybee, and a few down, fairly evenly dispersed through this neighborhood. It's typical conditions that we've looked through. The guest notification shall be posted on the property, requiring a local contact within 2-hour distance. They are required to pay occupancy taxes as per Chapter 94. It provided regulations should they choose to put a sign on the property, minimum off-street parking, maximum occupancy of 10 guests, and any other zoning regulations apply.
Do you have the plan, the site plan for this, Drew?
There we go. So the garage is towards the back of the property, so they have a long driveway that runs the entire length of the property, and of course widens out to 2-car widths there at the end, so ample parking on property.
So are y'all the owners of the property? Can you step up, please? Introduce yourself. Right here.
David Smith.
You are going to manage this yourself, or are you gonna have someone manage it, or
It'd be managed,
be managed?
yes. Well, this is gonna be the owner. I currently own it. I'm selling it to this gentleman.
Okay,
I'm gonna go take care of grandchildren, so.
Okay. You want to step up, sir?
Sure. My name is Vincent Lightborn. So yes, I'm looking to purchase the home.
And you will be here and you'll be managing it yourself?
I am in Austin, so hour and a half away. I am currently building out the team here, but I want to have somebody in town as well for things as needed. But I will be managing.
Will there be access, will someone have a phone number to call in case there is problems in the neighborhood or if there's issues?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I do have one speaker signed up to speak on this issue, Tristan Jarecki? Jarecki, I'm sorry.
It's fine. Yeah, I live on 913 Prescott,
Huh?
and I was all ready to have a rant and everything, but you guys are awesome, and you put all these meetings up online, and on December 2nd of last year, you denied the same thing for a house down the street because it's an oversaturated area. It is a neighborhood. I don't know if you're familiar with Prescott Street. It is a tiny street.
No, and I drove and looked at it.
And not only that, there's several more of these coming up later tonight. I would just like to, for the sake of time, voice my opinion for the next one for Murta Street as well. But those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Well, as we all know, this is a pretty big issue in the city of Kerrville right now. We're in the process of putting together a workshop to determine how we're gonna move on in the future with these. Now, we have denied, I have voted against several where there are 2 or 3 on the street. My feeling is it meets the criteria for a conditional use permit. There are pretty strict rules, no on-street parking. Anybody else have any? I mean, I drove and looked at them, I've looked at the area many times.
Drew, did you send letters to all the neighbors?
Yes.
No reply?
We did have one reply that's in your backup on this one.
The count of existing STRs, 4-ish? Is that right?
So these maps that we've got today, these are roughly about a half-mile wide. So kind of give you a scale.
So there's one at 960 Prescott existing?
Yes, there's an existing one here. That one was denied by P&Z. They appealed to city council and were approved by council. There's the 2 here on Tivy. And the request for one on Murta is right here. And then bottom of the map, there are 2 on Robinson. And there's 2 more, a couple blocks down on Robinson and Tivy when you get into the RT district. There's a couple of grandfathered that are in there.
One up on Washington, off Washington,
Yes.
and this is a half mile.
Yeah, it's roughly a half-mile wide on this map. Yeah, in the immediate block, it's just the one at the other end of the block.
Have there been any complaints on the one on the other end that the city is aware of,
No,
that you're aware of?
I have not received any complaints on, actually on any of these that you see here.
Any other comments or any questions, guys?
We know why it was turned down on the other one?
If I recall, the applicant was unable to be here,
Wasn't here.
and so we didn't have notice they weren't going to be here, and we didn't have a lot of the questions that the commission asks, management practices and intent and so on. So they just appealed to council and said, they are local management, and so they were approved.
Right.
Drew, what's the criteria on local management?
Just to have somebody a local contact within 2 hours. We are seeing quite a few folks from San Antonio or Austin that are interested in these. So that still allows them that contact. I know we have a couple of emerging short-term management companies in town as well. So a lot of the ones that we've seen are moving to a management company, so that they have that normal routine. But as far as the conditions that we request is someone within 2 hours.
What is your plan for marketing, or are you going to use a like an Airbnb or some type of service? You gonna list it, or
Yes, sir.
how?
How? I'm sorry?
How are you gonna market it?
This would be through the channels like Airbnb.
Okay.
To make them easily searchable,
Sure.
findable.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Guys? All right, if there are no questions or comments on this, let me close the public hearing at 4:45, and I'll entertain a motion on this conditional use permit for 916 Prescott. Do I have a motion to approve the conditional use permit for 916 Prescott?
Motion approved.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. We have a motion to approve. We have a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed. So the motion passes. Right, one opposed. So we're gonna move on to 3B. Conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 956 Murta Street.
This is a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on part of Lot 14 and part of Lot 15, Block 2, Hillcrest Edition, more commonly known as 956 Murta. Again, this one, letters were mailed out April 28th to the adjacent property owners. And this one also complies with zoning policies and comprehensive plan policies and with the standard conditions. This is a two-bedroom house, so there are required 3 parking spaces, and they have shown that they have 5 available. That's the same map we just looked at. Again, property has the driveway on the side of the property with the garage to the back, so ample room for those. The minimum of 3 parking spaces, and they've got room for 5.
Can you put the map back up, Drew?
Yes, sir. Maybe.
Go. Is the owner here?
Yes.
I recognize you.
And Sletton, 324 Clay Street, Kerrville.
I know you have set up management and notification for
Yes.
yours, right?
Yes, I actually co-own the management company that will be
There you go.
managing the short-term rental unit.
Good. Any questions, any comments of the? All right, if there are no, well, I guess I need to open the public hearing on this at 4:47. Are there anyone to speak on this? I know the gentleman has already spoken, so are there any other speakers on this? So I'll close the public hearing at 4:48, and I will entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit for the short-term rental at 956 Murta Street. if there
I'll
is
move
one.
to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve in a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? So the motion passes. Thank you.
Yeah, give me a second.
I know this is a tough issue. This is a hard issue for us to deal with because the criteria for turning down the conditional use permit are very strict under the guidelines that we have, so. Anyway, 3C, a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 220 River Hill Club Lane, Unit 12.
Resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on Lot 12, Block 1, River Hill, Las Casitas, more commonly known as 220 River Hill Club Lane, Unit 12. We did mail out 20 letters on the 28th of April, and of course advertised in the Daily Times. And this property is zoned R2, so it does comply with zoning policies and the comprehensive plan policies.
Well, let's open the public hearing at 4:49, and is the owner here of this property? You the
I'm here
manager?
as representation of the owner.
Is the owner local?
They live in Indiana.
Okay. Can you tell me what it's been used for up to this point?
I'm sorry, say
Has
that
it been
again?
rented up to this point, or has it been a rental?
The current owner bought the property recently. The previous owner had been running a short-term rental business out of this, but without city permission previously. I know the city had contacted them on a few different occasions to get them to come into compliance, and didn't, but they did eventually sell it. So this new owner is hoping to bring it into compliance.
Okay. I'm assuming since there's nobody here from River Hill, no one has any objections to this.
There are actually 3 down the street on River Hill
I
Club
saw
Lane
that.
existing.
I mean, it fits the criteria. I mean, it's in the middle of an area where there's golf courses and swimming pools and tennis courts and things like that, so. Okay, so I'm gonna close the public hearing at 4:50. Anybody have any questions of the gentleman, or concerns, or issues, or?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I would we have a motion to approve the conditional use permit. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Cliff.
All in favor, raise your hand. All right, the motion passes. So we are going to move on to 3D. Conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 604 Mockingbird Lane.
Resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on Lot 10, Block 3, Starkey Manor 7, more commonly known as 604 Mockingbird Lane. And this one is zoned R1. It is a 3-bedroom house, required 4 parking spaces, and they do have room for 5 parking spaces. As you can see, it's long 2-car driveway, and they actually do have another side parking space off to the side in that landscaping there. Go back to the map. There are some adjacent in Methodist encampment, but as you guys know, from this neighborhood, you can't access Methodist encampment. So though they're close in proximity, they're not close in access.
So in this general area, I don't see any more on Mockingbird Lane.
That's correct.
Actually, I don't see any. Yeah, I see some.
Yeah, there's the 4 on Tanglewood.
which- I remember that. We denied one because there were so many on Tanglewood already.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna open the public hearing at 4:52. I actually have, is the owner here on this one? Yes, ma'am. Can you step up briefly? What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Stephanie Childs, and I am the daughter of Catherine and Tom Clark that owned this property from 1998 until their passing in 20 and 21.
Okay.
And so they left the property to me, and we'd like to keep it in the family, but my sister is not ready to retire and move into the property yet. Their plans are to move here in November of 2023. And so we're concerned because there's already 2 vacant properties on Mockingbird that have been sitting for more than 5 years, of one that I know for sure. And we didn't want to leave it vacant, and we also wanted to keep it up and even fix it up so that it's in good repair when she's ready to move in. So my son is in the property management business in Austin, and he walked us through the steps of what we needed to do to get it prepared and staged and ready to rent. And then we learned that we needed to,
Yes, ma'am.
get into compliance. So,
Are you local here?
yes, we are.
Okay, so your son, are you going to kind of oversee and handle any issues while you're?
We are planning that. My husband and I moved here 2 years ago, and so we've been sort of the local on-site residents to kind of take care of everything that needs to be handled locally. My son's company is very strict. He's learned in kind of a hard market, the Austin market, that you have to go in and kind of make sure that you're very crystal clear with guests about what is expected when you're coming into a residential neighborhood. His goal was to market it to executives, medical professionals, families that come to visit, and that's pretty much who has been renting the property. And we've also spoken with our neighbors, reached out to them, and so far it's been going pretty well, so.
Okay,
complaints.
thank you very much. Claire? Yes, ma'am?
Hi, this is my first time to do something like this, so I'm kind of excited and
There
scared.
you go. You can tilt that microphone down a little bit if you need to. There you go.
What
Okay.
was your name again, ma'am?
Clarice Ammon.
You live at 612 Mockingbird Lane?
I do, yes. And I've just been curious about why we had to have a B&B or something like that in our neighborhood. We are a family neighborhood, and this is the first if you've reached out, I haven't talked to you. And so I haven't had any way to know. I did talk to Rodney finally and find out a little bit more about what was happening. But I'm a little concerned about having a B&B in my neighborhood. I'd prefer that it be a more long-term rental and not that sort of temporary thing. I don't have children anymore, but I do have grandchildren, and I know there are children in the neighborhood, and it would be a little concerning to me. We already have enough traffic up and down our street at this point, and it would be a little bit of a concern to me, so I'm not at this point in favor of it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Rodney Bacon.
Hi, Rodney Bacon, 1221 Oriole, so I'm just around the corner, but the side of my house is on Mockingbird. And I'm opposed to this, not that I want to hurt my neighbor, but I want to protect the other neighbors too. I'm concerned with the property values. Almost directly across the street are two vacant houses. Again, one of them's been vacant the 19 years I've been in my house, and adjacent to it is another house that's vacant. And I don't want it to turn into a motel neighborhood. I'd like it to be a family neighborhood. I grew up here, and that's a great neighborhood, has been forever. I'd like to keep it that way. I worry about our values. The plan here is for the next year and a half. Initially, I thought it was like for 6 months to this fall, but it's actually the fall of '23. And if someone doesn't decide to move in, then this family, you know, what happens, what could happen in the next 18 months? So I'm worried about our values and the people that are in the neighborhood that we don't know. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Rodney. Anyone else? No one signed up to speak, so I'm gonna close the public hearing.
I think she has another.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
I just wanted to, I just want to address one issue
Sure.
about, in terms of security. So, one of the things that my son did to set this Airbnb up was, he set it up to have cameras, video cameras on the front of the property. I mean, we stayed with my mother for 6 months before we bought a house here. We never had an issue. We've left our garage doors up. It's a very safe neighborhood. So I do understand concerns about safety and security, and he was also concerned. So we put up ways to monitor who is coming in and out of the property. There is a camera outside. No, you can't put anything inside, obviously, but there are cameras on the outside. There is also, he takes an ID for every person staying every stay. So if there's a family of 5, we have to have IDs on all 5 people. We know who is coming in and out of the property. That's another. The other thing that we found is that with these type of rentals for a week, week and a half to 2 weeks, people generally take care of the property. We've dealt with people on the other end of the street who were renting a property that was closer to Warbler, who were driving at very high speeds with children on the road, up and down the roads. And I can't say that every guest is perfect, but I will say that we have a way in place to make sure if someone is not compliant, if the noise is too loud, because we have a way to measure noise, if they're causing a problem, if a neighbor calls us, they are asked to leave the property and removed from the property. So we do have safety and security of people in mind, and we spent about $20,000 upgrading the house so it's not sitting in a vacant state, bringing down, to make sure that it's been taken care of. So this is just a way to recoup that until we can get someone in there more permanent. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to close the public hearing at 4:59. Any,
Question for Drew.
go ahead.
Are there any other rentals in that general area?
I'm sorry?
Other rentals in that general
You
area?
put the map back up, Drew. I didn't see.
Like we're opening up a new area.
Don't see.
No, I don't believe there are any.
No, there's some further north up here on Tanglewood.
Right, and again, you can't get to Methodist Encampment from this neighborhood.
Exactly right.
There may be some south of here, but they're gonna be more than a half
14
mile
off
away,
there.
closer to Junction Highway. I mean, it's a ways before you get to any.
Any other questions, guys? All right, if there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit, short-term rental for 604 Mockingbird Lane.
Also move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? So the motion is passed. Now we're going to move on to 3E.
This is a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 408 Lois Street. Resolution, again, for lot 14 block, or lot 4, block 14, Westland Edition. And this is a 2-bedroom house, required 3 parking spaces. And
Is-
similar situation with the garage.
Go back to the map real quick.
Yes,
for
sorry.
408.
This property is right here.
Right there.
And there is one on Lucille that was approved last month. We'll make sure they get. And another existing on Lucille.
So this is right off of 27. This is a pretty good location. I'm gonna open the public hearing at 5:01 on this. Is the owner here?
My name is Carrie Wilt. I live at 398 Cave Springs Drive.
Hi Carrie, how you doing?
Everybody.
I'm very familiar with your management,
Yes, sir.
so you guys are set up pretty good.
Yeah. I will say too of this house, usually we bring you a house that's already done and ready to go. This one is in need of repair and updates, and so we're bringing it to you on the front end of this one. So if you do a drive-by, you'll see it. It needs some prettying up still.
Okay, so I have one speaker, owner of 406 and 407 Lois Street, Jacob Shively. Hi, Jacob.
My name is Jacob Shively. I own 406 next door.
Yes, sir.
I own 407 across the street,
Yes, sir.
which is in the zone, and I own 404 Lucille, which is next to the other one on Lucille that said got approved last month.
Yes, sir.
My only concern is, of course, what she just said, is that the house is really badly in need of repair. I mean, and I don't know if it's got adequate parking for 3 cars, because they park out on the street, and I'm very familiar with it. I've owned that house. My family's owned that house since 1991, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And then I think we've owned the house across the. All my houses were left to me by my grandmother, which passed away, Dr. Conroy, that used to be a psychiatrist at the state hospital in her own private practice. My main concern is the parking right now is not adequate, and there's renters in it right now, and they're parking out on the street now. I've never met her. I've never been contacted by anyone about this. This is the first thing I've ever heard about it, and get the letter. My only concern is that it's really in badly need of repair on that piece of property. So I hope that they will bring it way up and will be looked at when it's approved, if it is approved by you guys, before you approve it, that it's brought up to like any kind of spec. I don't know what y'all require.
Well, it requires quite a bit. Number one, if it can't provide the housing, it won't get approved. I mean, the parking. Number two, I know Carrie, and they own quite a few of these properties, and
Well, the driveway is just as deep as my driveway if you look next door, and 3 cars would be really tight.
well, Carrie, can you address that for us, please?
Yeah, we can fit 1 in the garage, in the actual garage, and then 2 behind it. There's plenty of space.
So I'm assuming your plan is to do some substantial renovations.
Yes, we do have long-term renters in there today, of course, and as you know, everybody's allowed to park on the street, so parking on the street for our long-term renters is not an issue. But we know it's a diamond in the rough. We chose to come to you first to make sure that we were approved for, before we invested the significant amount of money that we want to put into this house. We feel like it's primely located. I mean, we back up to commercial. I know it'll increase your property values to have that house go up as well. So our investment in this is definitely in the long term, so.
One of the main conditions for getting the conditional use permit, even if it was granted, it would be subject to adequate parking, and if the adequate parking was not provided, it would be revoked.
Okay, I'm just concerned right now.
No,
'cause-
I fully appreciate you being here, I
and we-
understand your concerns, I
And
mean.
me and my family have been, I'm a longtime resident here. I owned Hill Country Wrecker Service for years and recently retired. And I just want to make sure that it's going to be, I'm sure it'll bring up anything next door. If that thing gets a paint job, will bring up my property values.
Yeah.
We just bought it 6 months ago.
Yeah, my main concern is that she just owned it 6 months, but I've watched it over the years being rented, and it really was dilapidated.
Yeah.
I mean, at one time, I don't know how it is now, the back door had been chewed off by, I don't know, rats or squirrels, I don't know.
We have all new doors, and it is up to code. It is, it's got a new septic system, all the
One of the
things.
things I can tell you for sure, based on the rents that these conditional use permit short-term rentals bring, it's gonna have to be brought up to
Okay.
pretty sufficient.
Okay.
But-
But I don't have a problem with the Airbnb being there.
I mean-
I just have an issue with the parking and, I own the property, like I said, beside it, across the street. I just don't want it affecting my
Completely understand.
properties
I don't
like
blame
that.
you at all.
So,
And I'm pretty sure Carrie would be happy to talk to you anytime you needed to.
okay, all right, that's my only issue. Thank you.
I have no other speakers for this. So with that being said, I'm going to close the public hearing at 5:06. And I will entertain a motion to approve the short-term rental request for 408 Lois. We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second?
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Raise your hand. It passes. I see some people waving this. Do we need to turn the AC down a little bit? Are you guys hot? Are we saving electricity? All right, 3F. So I missed the speaker on D. Okay, we're gonna move on to 3F, a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 1979 Arcadia Loop.
There's a resolution for a conditional use permit for short-term rental on 3.015 acres out of the Martinez Survey, number 124, abstract 247, or commonly known as 1979 Arcadia Loop. This property is zoned R2. It is actually a one-bedroom house that only requires 2 parking spaces, which is the minimum parking for any property in R2. To the map real quick. Did go a little bit wider on this map just to capture all of Arcadia Loop. There are 4 on that long street there. As you can see, these have access to the river on one side. There's the home and the garage and the existing kind of gravel parking, if you will.
All right, this as well requires a public hearing. I'm gonna open the public hearing at 5:08. I do have 2 speakers for this. Is the owner here?
Yes.
Would you step up, please?
We're Trey and Paula Thrash. And we
Where,
own this-
do you live here in Kerrville?
Yes, sir. We actually live 3 houses down from that property.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Go out there and take a look at it. You guys will be managing it yourself, or you have, how you plan on marketing and managing?
Currently plan on managing ourselves. We've actually reached out to some local management, or a lady here local, Kim Richards, to help kind of guide us through the
She's good.
process on how to do it, utilizing Airbnb and VRBO as the primary marketing for it.
You guys have any questions before we have the speakers for them? Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Rideout.
I'll pass.
Okay, you're gonna pass?
Yes.
How about Ronnie Smith?
Right here.
Got it.
I'm Ron Smith.
Ron Smith, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And I live on Arcadia Loop, 2 lots down. What I'd like to point out with this piece of property, that it is on the Guadalupe River. And even though there's 3 acres available there, there is a berm that runs out in front of these properties that was put there years ago as a flood deterrent. That means that about 1 acre is usable. I had the same size acre, close to it. I'm gonna say I have 2 acres, but I only have 1 acre that I could really use. If I build down here, in whether I don't know if it's a flood zone or not, because it's gone back and forth with FEMA over the last couple years. But if anything ends up down in the lake that's built in this zone south of the berm, you can end up being fined by the city if it ends up in the lake. And so there's a big problem there, that there's really only 1 acre to use there. So I have a couple questions.
Sure,
Go from there.
absolutely.
Are y'all planning on, are the owners planning on building any additional units on that piece of property?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Not for this right now.
Okay, but you have to state somewhere that you would have to go back and reapply.
We understand.
Okay, so it would be a formal application to
Yes,
put
sir.
another unit in there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this road here comes all the way down to Loop 98.
Yes, sir.
Dead
We
ends.
live down that way.
Okay, well, it dead ends. Nobody else knows that here.
Okay.
It dead ends here. We have people already going 50 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and the city can't do anything about it. They can't put speed bumps in, they can't do any deterrence because it is a dead end. I've already filed a complaint with the city. So that means if you put in another unit in here, you're gonna increase the traffic on this road, and there's no way out. There's only one way out of this whole street, and that's either Bear Creek or the highway. That's what I was just curious about your future, your future plans.
Yes, sir.
That's-
And we don't fully know what our future plans are. We also own the property right next to it.
Yeah,
And then we also own the property right across the street from it. And we own the property 3 places down from it is where we live. So we agree with you.
okay.
But I will also say that our experience, and we've been there 23 years. We've not here, but down there where we live. Most of the issues, and I agree with you on the speeding, but so Mr. Rideout right there, we know that they have property that they do short-term. We have a short-term rental right next to us, and you get to see them as well. We've had no issues from short-term rental properties that are near us, at least. And
Are there
most
any-
of the, pardon?
I'm sorry, my fault.
And anything that we've had there have been long-term, long-term residents that we have noticed anyway.
Do you own any short-term rentals right now?
No
So
short-term.
you really don't know exactly how it's gonna turn out, except what you've seen on the property?
That's right.
Okay, I have one at the same property, 2021, it's right next door to me, and the 2031's a B&B. Now, this got parking for at least 5 to 10 cars in the front yard. But there are occasions, which I have no problem with the occasions, family occasions, whatever, that it goes up and it blocks a street, because a lot of people are coming to this occasion on these homes. Anyway, it could be mine too. But he has to ask the person across the street for additional parking. That's going a little, I think that's pushing it, especially in a residential area. I've got a copy of the zoning rules here that I got back about 2015. And if you put in some kind of business like this, you could only hire a person in your family, or you can only hire one employee who's outside your family.
Those are different rules for a home occupation. This would not qualify as a home occupation. And so that code that you're reading from is actually not in effect anymore.
Okay, so they could have cleaning people come out, lawn people come out,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera,
That's correct.
in order to maintain the property.
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
those are
increases, that
different.
increases the traffic.
Those are different regulations for a different use, not for this use.
These are,
What you're reading is for a customary home occupation. That is not a short-term rental. That's for someone
okay,
operating
what
a
it says here, it
business.
says an occupation, business, or activity,
Correct.
occurring in a dwelling unit.
That is someone running a business
Business.
from a home,
Running the business.
not
What do
renting.
they do? What is this?
This is renting a home for a short-term rental. I understand your point. Those are different rules and those do not apply.
What you're pointing out is if I'm an architect and I run a business out of my home, that's the rules that apply for what you're talking about. Or if I'm a contractor, whatever, if I'm a business person and I've got a license to run my business out of my house, those are the rules that apply for a business. This is a residential use. It is a business, but it's not in the business in the what you're talking about. And another issue with one of the benefits of short-term rentals is they are not allowed to park. You know, if you rent a house in a neighborhood, you park on the street all you want. You run a business as if you're occupying a short-term rental, you cannot park on the street.
Okay, now, are there any formal rules within the county or city that apply to short-term rentals at this point?
Yeah, the city has stipulations that the short-term rental has to go by. They have,
Oh, sorry, okay.
yeah.
Are they easy to find online,
I mean,
or do you have to be a professional to find them online?
I can send them to you. That's
Yeah,
part
he-
of this process.
yeah.
Well, yeah, but you're a professional. I happen to be a homeowner, and just happened to come out and hear about this. It's not that I go every day and study them.
Right.
And I've heard rumors in the background that they're very hard to get into and find out the information you're looking for your particular case. They're not well organized. Zoning rules, whether they're county or city, to get online and look at them. Okay, well, there's a problem there. Big problem. People come in and put an Airbnb and nobody understands what's ruling them because they can't find them as a general resident.
Well, my opinion would be get in touch with Drew, Director of Planning Services, and he can get them for you.
Okay. Am I on a time schedule?
Well,
Yes.
not really, but do you have anything else?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay, how many days is a short-term rental considered?
Less than 30 days.
Okay, so you could have people coming in there to do the weekend thing, go in and out, and then all of a sudden you have a complaint, and management 2 hours away, or whatever the rule is, that they have to apply or reply in 2 hours, is way off the bat. It doesn't even apply. Now, I guess my only problem with it, I gotta call the police. Now what happens? Does the owners ever get told?
Well, of course they do. The owners get notified immediately wherever they are. If you call the police come out, and if there's a legitimate complaint, the police will handle it, but the owners will be responsible.
Okay, great, thank you. This is a dead-end street, so I'm just wondering if there was additional homes, additional units built out there, does the city monitor the sewer load on that line going to that dead-end street?
Can't build anything without water and sewer capacity. You can't get a permit to build if there's not a sufficient, and if it, at some point, it could even, depending upon how many units, require a traffic study.
Great, okay. No, I appreciate it, thank you very
You
much.
bet. Thank you for your interest. Anybody else? I think I'm gonna close the public. Do you have anything else you want to say, sir?
No,
You good?
just didn't know if there's any more questions.
I do have a question. It brings up a point. If in the future, we're granting a conditional use permit for this unit at this address,
Yes.
if they decided they wanted to build another unit at that address,
They would have to come
have
back
to come
and
back and apply.
update that conditional use permit. It would go back through notification process, Planning and Zoning Commission, and City Council.
Okay. That answers
That's
it.
correct.
Right, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 5:19.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, take one more?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
If I don't let you, the city attorney will get all over me.
Don't get over me. When you put out the notice, it's only people within a 200-foot radius.
Correct, and then we're posting a sign on the property that says that there's a public hearing on this property. So anybody that drives by will see that. There it is.
and
right
I
there.
didn't see that.
It
When
was there,
that
I
put-
saw it. I
what was that
drove
put
by
on
and
the
looked at it
property?
on Monday.
2 weeks ago?
Oh, is that right? Okay.
sir.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. All right, 5:19, public hearing closed. All right, any questions, comments, concerns for the commissioners?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second? Second. We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
As you can see, there's a lot of activity in the conditional use permit market these days, and I'm relatively certain in the short term, we're going to do a workshop, and the city is gonna come up with some additional guidelines on what we can and can't do to either approve or disapprove these conditional use permits. They're touchy, I understand that.
That's what they put as conditions on
All right, we're gonna move on to 3G, zoning change, 2550 Bandera Highway and 2601 Medina Highway. Before we start this, I have a couple of comments to make. Whatever we do here goes to the city council for approval. And I want to make one correction. I'm in receipt of an email that was circulated in Comanche Trace that said that the planning and zoning commissioners have already met in an executive session and voted on this, and it's a done deal. And I'm just going to speak to whoever sent that email out that is a blatant lie. There is no executive session for planning and zoning. Everything we do is in front of the public. It's right here. You have a public hearing. You have a right to come and respond. And I, as the commissioner of the P&Z, don't appreciate someone accusing us of violating Open Meetings Act. So just so everyone understands it's here, there has been nothing decided on this issue. There has been no private meetings. There is no executive session for planning and zoning. So let's get that clear right up front. All right, Drew.
This is an ordinance to change the zoning from R1 Single Family to a Planned Development District on approximately 487 acres of land out of the David Shishard Survey, number 67, abstract 299, Nathaniel Hoyt Survey, number 147, abstract 178, John A. Southmaid Survey, number 148, abstract 288, Al Weiss's Clark Survey, number 395, abstract 101, and the Norma P. Schweitzer SF number 16211, abstract 2086, and more commonly known as 2550 Bandera Highway and 2601 Medina Highway. And I'm actually going to turn this one over to the applicant because they do have a presentation for the master plan of the Planned
We'll do
Development
the
District.
presentation, and after the presentation, we'll open the public hearing.
Okay. Martin, can you pull up the other presentation? Sorry, the other PDF, Martin.
I don't think that's it.
No, that's not it.
There it is. I think we got it.
You got it. How are we gonna handle the,
Can everyone see that, where you're sitting?
you gonna let me change it? Thanks. The one on the right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you again. We were here on April 7th for the annexation meeting, as you may recall. My name is Nick Bashkaroff. I'm the Development Director for Triple Root Development, which is the applicant in this particular case. I'd like to introduce gentlemen who I have with me, one of whom will also speak is our master planner, Mr. Nick Haskell, who's right behind me. Also, we have our attorney, Mr. Ken Brown from Brown and Ortiz, and our engineers from Pape Dawson, Mr. Travis McCoy, as well as my other two partners, Mr. Anthony Falden and Mr. Zachary Godfrey. So we're pleased to be here, and we welcome the opportunity to explain to you what we're doing and why. So the first part of this is really to talk about what the proposal is that we have in front of you. Okay, and that's it. Not cooperating. It's a little slow, I think. All right, well, anyway, I'll try to see if the slides can match the order. Okay, here we go. All right, so the intention is really to establish a new community with a fine-grained blend of housing types and densities that will hopefully further the city of Kerrville's development goals. We're very, very familiar with the strategic plan for housing for Kerrville, and in particular, the middle missing housing component of the strategic plan, which is part of what we intend to try to fulfill within the project itself. We intend to create an integrated and interconnected community of homes. In other words, it is not a blanket development with all the same product type that we have in mind to do for the entire project. We will have design standards that we will put in place that will monitor and ensure under covenants that the nature and quality of what we are doing is maintained in perpetuity. It's very clear that that is a very comprehensive and integral part of our plan. And it is all being done in the accordance of the existing zoning districts, R2, R3, C2, C4, and MU, which is mixed use, if anyone is unfamiliar. The intent is to create a very cohesive, highly walkable community, to introduce innovative housing typologies which are not present in the market, and to embrace also well-known housing types. We intend to encourage walkability through the inclusion of trails and paths throughout the project and open spaces, as well as to protect the site and the natural environment. And in light of what we've been able to discern from what's been going on with conditional use permits, there will be a product typology within the master plan that will be a series of cottages that will be allowed for what we want to have as a right, which is the VRBO component, because we think that that in the context of a new community plan versus an existing city plan allows for visitation of a variety of types, keeps the community active, and also adds to the vibrancy of the community. Among the many things that we will have in the community will be a variety of these home types, which I've described, and we'll get into it as we move down the design path, but there will be two-story and one-story homes. There will be cottages, as I indicated. There will be small lots as well as estate lots, and those estate lots, which Nick will explain to you, are planned in a way to balance out what the topography of the site is and the adjacency which we have with Comanche Trace. I must also share with you that my partners and I have met with Comanche Trace. We have met with River Hill. We have met with some of the neighbors adjacent to us in specific. So we've been able to at least socialize what our intentions are and listen to their concerns and try to address them the best we can. We have, the majority of this is an R2 zone, which provides for living spaces that are a bit closer in the front than having a normal garage. We're asking for the streets to be such that we're trying to create a more intimate neighborhood so that a lot of the housing types that we're going to be doing will have alley-loaded access, meaning that the garage faces on some of the districts will not be there. The garages will be in the back, which makes the fronts of the neighborhood streets much more intimate. Let me go back to, skipped, sorry. It's not responding particularly well. Come on. Pushing the button. I need a 12-year-old to help me here. Still not working. Very well. Okay. So anyway, this is the land use plan that has been submitted. The bit that you see on the very top, those three little squares, actually go on to the end of it on the far right, which moves us to Highway 173. The majority of it, which is in the kind of brownish color, will be half-acre to three-quarter-acre lots. That's what our intention is. There'll be a little bit more density towards Highway 16. And the big part of all of this is the arterial that we've been working with city staff to include in the plan, which connects Highway 16 to Highway 173. It's a 100-foot easement that is being planned and is in the plan that you have, and provides for 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, ultimately when it's needed, to hopefully address the concerns that we've heard from the River Hill neighborhood and generally for the kind of growth that is being experienced on Highway 16. Let me go back. And I might also point out, I'll go back to the other slide, sorry. The slide that is the bit of the blue on the far right, which is on 173, is set up for potential use as a hotel site, which would actually be more like an inn, which we think would be very appropriate in the context of its location. Adjacent to it is a multifamily site. It's the only multifamily that we have within the entire 500 acres. And then beyond that, we move to primarily residential and mixed-use zoning. There will be live-work units that will be around what we call the Ellipse, which is actually a park in the upper corner that you can see. And there will be a 5-acre park that we have planned for the area that is in the kind of the salmon color right around the curve that borders Shriner Park. And I think Nick will explain it to you in a little bit more detail than I. The name of the project is obviously the Reserve, as everyone can see, and unfortunately, the button isn't helping me. All right, so back to vision. So why are we here and what are we trying to do? What we're doing is something very intentional. We're intending to build some of the product ourselves and not farm this out to tract builders. We're not interested in this being a tract development by any stretch of the imagination. We consider this to be very much of a handmade project. We are very committed to Kerrville and to improving the quality of life for the people that live within our project and adjacent to it. And we see this project as being something of a draw. We intend to put in about 40 acres worth of vines. We will have a vineyard that's a part of this project as well. As you may be familiar with the site, it's been pretty much denuded of all of the trees, short of the oaks, by the current owner. So in order to really bring back some of what we think the potential is for not only the site, but for Kerrville, it is to introduce a winery, which the residents of this particular subdivision will have an ownership stake in, which is also, I think, a unique part of it. We will do farm to table as well. We'll have gardens and community gardens that will be incorporated in it. And we're very much convinced, and we believe strongly in the commitment to the environment in terms of how we're planning it. And that will be evident when you go and see what Nick will share with you. The guiding principles that we have are based very simply on open spaces. We'll go back again. We will have roughly 1.7 miles worth of paths, 1.2 miles worth of creeks, roughly 46 acres worth of vineyards, and 50 acres worth of parks. And that's over and above the open spaces in between the various buildings that we have created within it. So open space is very important for quality of life, being tied to the environment and making sure, as I mentioned, that the trails and the community gardens add value to the living experience is critical. In addition to that, and again, the walkability and pedestrian-friendly environment we think is very important. And these are parts of the 8 principles that we've established for the quality of life, and establishing a healthy lifestyle, which is all about building a sense of community within the parks and some of the mixed-use elements that we have, and also education through the community center that will have lifelong education for all age groups that will be available as we move along. And the same thing with respect to economic viability, which is very important in terms of it being able to address various sectors of the economy and not purely one asset class in particular. So that, it's like on a delay, Drew. Push, nothing happens. I think we need and another aspect obviously is that the community will be smart. Nick, you want to take it and explain how you got to the plan? Indeed. There you go. You have to push and be very patient. All right.
I'll try to, well, Nick pushes and is sometimes patient with me, and sometimes he's a little less patient. So good evening, commissioners, community members. My name is Nick Haskell. I am a consulting land use planner and have spent the last 30 years preparing land use plans for private developers as well as local governmental agencies and municipalities. Nick gave me a ring for Kerrville several months ago, and the request that came through had to do with the vision of the community. The reason he gave me a call was because he was very clear at the outset that the team's vision for this project was not that of a large subdivision. Yes, I've laid out lots of large subdivisions. We all know how to do that. However, in this case, the message was very clear. The team was interested in building community, and we recognized that it was an important and special place. And I didn't understand this. I hadn't seen the site, so of course we had to, go out and see the site, and we'll talk about that. For those of you not familiar with the site, it's south of where we are right now. It's immediately adjacent to Shriner Park. As Nick mentioned, we're bounded by Highway 16 and 173. Oops, I guess I'm running into Nick's challenge now about clicking. Whoa. Hang on, now I gotta go back too. All right, actually, these photographs are a little deceptive. The site is largely undeveloped today. However, it does have some very interesting terrain and topography, as well as a variety of stands of oak trees. And hopefully you can see this. It's funny, as we've been staring at that drawing for the last several months, it looks huge. It's a 487-acre site, and yet on that little map it looks pretty small. And what you can't really see there is really the complexity of the site, which is what I think made it much more challenging and interesting as a design opportunity. I think this thing decided to click ahead on its own right there, but as we got into the site, what we began to do, we started with more of a fundamental land use approach or a land form approach to land use. So rather than importing just an idea on top of the site, we went the other route and we started with site analysis. So this figure, for those of you who are not familiar with those, that's called a slope analysis. So what that means is we received the topography of the site. We got a big map of the site that showed all the topography. And then we went about evaluating where it was steep or not steep. And this is done using AutoCAD and GIS. And the only reason I mention that is, again, it is a pretty big site. And this had to be done relatively carefully so that we didn't make sweeping decisions. We had to make thoughtful decisions. So without getting into all of the nuance of this, what we can refer to you in this drawing is those blue areas, the blue areas and the really lighter shades, are generally lower topography or even flat in some cases. So that's 0 to 2%, 0 to 3%, 3 to 6, pretty modest. And then by the time you work your way up into the yellow, the orange, and the red, you can see it gets pretty darn steep. And the reason I mention all this is that became the basis for our decision making in terms of land use planning. So if we look at as we try to look at the site, imagine the next figure being helpful. Okay, so in this figure, what we began to do was characterize the site in terms of landform areas. So after we did that, so what's the importance of that analysis is what this is getting at. And what you'll see is in that southern corner, we've got an area that we characterized as the highlands. So that's where you get some pretty steep, frankly, very interesting terrain and topography. You've got rolling hills. You don't have sharp hills, but they're dramatic hills. In other words, they're not the sort of hill that you comfortably walk straight up. You work your way up like you're on a park trail and, in a park, and you get to the top and there's a nice rolling ridge. That cream-colored area is pretty darn flat. And crossing the cream-colored area, you see the blue. There are a variety of little streams that cross the site. And then that more kind of, I guess, the darker orange amber color is what we call the midlands. So that's a lot of the site. That's a lot of like 5 and 6% slope. And if it's easy to say it's only 5 or 6%, well, that's a pretty significant amount of slope. And by that I mean, if you're looking at a distance, say it's 100 feet long, on the 0 foot side, it's 0, and at the end of 100 feet, it's gone up or down 5 feet, which, imagine the guy's height over 100 feet. It becomes relevant when you're thinking about communities and how you're trying to do roads. And our goal was not to grade the site out, not to tear it all apart. So I'm going to ask you again to imagine a fantastic image. Oh. Go back again. So we put together a framework concept diagram. And what this is illustrating, the area, again, in the bottom, the yellow shade with the green horizontal lines is an area that is pretty steep. We know we need to be able to get up there, but that's not the place where you put as much development as you can. In fact, you go the other direction and take a much lighter touch. So when we looked at the roads, we laid out the roads like you would lay out a path for yourself to walk up and down the hill. So you look for the low spots, the areas where the grades aren't too steep, where you can get to the top, and when you get to the top, there's some flat spots versus zooming right up the top. If you then follow to the orange and the amber areas, you can see those shapes are a little bit more regular. There's also a little bit more in terms of connectivity in there. You can see I wish this thing had wish I had a mouse. There is the park that Nick alluded to, the Great Ellipse Park, the Great Ellipse north of that area that I just characterized. That becomes a core area. So there's the Great Ellipse. That area is relatively flat. It's not too steep in terms of terrain and topography. And fronting one side of it, we might try to do some ground floor shops and maybe, I don't know, apartments above or a little office space above. Not huge, but enough to be the right scale. That becomes a core area. Similarly, toward the center of the project, you can see that other red area and the green dot. That green dot in the red area is where we'd have a community club. So there's currently a drainage that pulls to that point, and at the end of that drainage is a dam. There's an existing dam there. So we could say that dam becomes the purpose behind a park, which is then tied to a little community center. And then adjacent to that in that red area is the area that Nick referred to before with maybe a winery and bringing some of the arts in, looking for an opportunity to create a really special and fine-grained destination. The long black dashed line that goes all the way through the site, that's the arterial road that Nick was referring to. And that's something that the city of Kerrville has requested and required. So we've outlined, and by the way, that was no picnic. Again, there's enough topography on this site that it's not as easy as it looks. If you stare at the site and think, oh, it's flat. Well, it's not. There are parts of the site that are flat, and then there's some real terrain and topography. So we tried to weave it through in a way that it becomes an integral community element, not an element that divides the community up. Okay, we're trying again. Okay, here we go. So in terms of what we're proposing as far as land use, we note here a family of districts woven together. And that's really the point. We're not creating any isolated pods. We're creating neighborhoods that are connected with one another. So we have what we call the estate lots down to the south, and that's where Nick alluded to, where we've got larger lots in steeper terrain where we can also bring in some vineyards, some vineyard land. So as you go to the top of the hill, you've got estate lots, and working your way up the hill, you got vineyards. Toward the central area, you can see Creekside. Evident enough, there's a drainage way, and we're making it a real point to stay out of the drainages and not see those as a problem. Instead, see them as a community amenity, a way to tie the whole place together. We've got what we call village residential to the north of that. Again, that's a mixed-use community with a variety of housing types and densities. Again, all woven together. As we work our way out towards the Guadalupe River, you'll see more village residential, another community park. That's more of a traditional recreational park. You know, a big park with greens, playgrounds for kids, traditional park. And then as you work your way right up toward the river's edge, the little inn that we were describing. So again, back to that open space element. The open space becomes, like I say, we started with terrain and topography, understand the land, and within the terrain and topography, understand what we have in terms of open space or potential for open space. You all recall that in the kind of the lower left green corner, or the lower left corner, that dark green area, that was the area in that topographic map that was so steep. Well, rather than that have that as somebody's backyard, we want a trail that goes all the way up there, so when you get to the top, you can see out across the valley. So a pedestrian path and a little sitting place. And within each neighborhood, a variety of smaller, appropriately scaled parks. Come on. All right, so what we're going to do is quickly go through some of the housing types. And I think the purpose of this isn't really to get into architectural styling or anything to that effect. The bigger question has more to do, though, with the desired character of this community. That this is not a monochrome, it's not a single paintbrush of homes across the site. In fact, it's much more of a mosaic of different homes in different places with different purposes, meeting different needs. So yes, there are larger lot estate residential, and those again range from maybe 3/4 of an acre to a couple acres in size. Here we go. We also have quite a lot, though, of what we're calling family residential. So that's the opportunity to bring forward, as Nick had mentioned, traditional homes that we see in neighborhoods all over the country. But then also bring in some alley-loaded homes. And alley-loaded homes are, again, a little narrower. And what that means by alley-loaded is that there's the garage to your house is actually in your backyard. And in your backyard is a privately owned alley. That's part of the neighborhood. So you park back there, but then your front yard is just your porch and your garden. There aren't garage doors every house. It's just a streetscape, which is pretty cool. It makes for really a lovely neighborhood. The cottage courtyards are a really cool concept, and a way to characterize this, to try to be as succinct as possible. Imagine a park, a city park, and within the city park, we're proposing a variety of homes and cottages. And these homes and cottages might be smaller than what we just saw, but they are clearly fully functional, cute cottages and homes. The difference between these and a traditional neighborhood is the parking for these is actually pulled out on the edges. So if you can imagine this park with your homes connected by paths, your parking is in clusters around the perimeter, and then you've got this cohesive neighborhood that is woven together around open space. And it's a great concept. I think it was very exciting to see the opportunity to build these. And then some live work. The idea, in fact, this gentleman had talked about, yes, sir, we were listening, home occupation. So if you are a local accountant or a broker or whatever you do, if you want to be at home, there is the opportunity for folks to work out of their house, work whatever you do. And that can be as significant as actually having a service where people come by, or maybe shop of some sort where you're exchanging goods. But on the other hand, maybe more like you mentioned, an architect earlier, or an accountant, or a city planner, doing their thing from their place, woven again within the community, which we think is great. It's just a really exciting idea. And part of what we're doing that's a little interesting here is some of this could be in the form of that picture in the upper left, where it's kind of what you envision as a mixed-use building, maybe some ground floor, small shop space, and a little studio above. But you can also do that in the context of a single-family home, and do it really, really nicely, where the plan is laid out in such a way that on your ground floor, maybe you do have an office or a gallery space or whatever. We mentioned hospitality. This, again, is not over the top. We're not talking, extravagant, crazy building. It's something in terms of the scale of the place. Part of our major challenge here is to protect this site and not come in and be too heavy-handed and, mess it up. We want to go in the other direction and take a light touch and embrace the fact that it's special. So if you look at 70 to 100 key boutique resort inn, so it's not supposed to be a, mega destination. No, it's a special destination. It's a special destination that's part of Kerrville, and it's a really lovely site. We've got an opportunity within the larger community for what we're calling flex workspace. So that's to say, yes, that could be traditional office. However, as Nick mentioned before, in regard to design guidelines, we don't want that to look like a suburban office park. That's not tilt-up buildings and surface parking. Instead, it's thoughtfully crafted buildings that can be used to meet the needs of very specific users. And that's part of the reason we call it flex workspace. So you've got a low-rise building, but the way it's designed is intended to reflect more of the desired lifestyle of living or working there. And again, within the community, public realm, and the community club, if you're not on trails, we have sidewalks. Every neighborhood gets sidewalks. Within neighborhoods, you're connected to parks and paths. And parks and paths, in turn, connect you to either mixed-use centers or other neighborhoods, or one sort of community core or the other, or a community garden. It's all integrated with one another. Health and wellness is a big part of the community. The opportunity, as I say, there are a variety of different ways to address health and wellness in this community. As I mentioned, there is a traditional community park, playground and whatnot for kids. But there are also opportunities for classes, dealing with particular types of fitness and working out, cycling, jogging, trails. But again, all woven into the greater picture. Oops, I don't know what we're doing with technology here. We might be. I might be able to say thank you very much for your time. We're very excited about the project, and we are pleased to discuss it and answer questions and follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask questions?
Not yet.
I'm gonna go through my report first. Martin, thank you very much. And catch me up real quick. So I'm gonna go through the document that you guys have for the development standards. So the planned development district is intended to be more or less a customized zoning for a project like this that's master planned that doesn't fit directly into the current zoning code. So we'll go through kind of page by page, some list of changes that they've made or requesting to the zoning, based on their land use plan. These are based off of our current zoning districts, again, with their modifications. So the bulk of it is R2. There's an area that's labeled as C2, C3, and mixed use. So under the languages for those, the R2 district, they did mention the short-term rental would be allowed by right rather than conditional use permit. We have had another planned development district make that same request here in town. And the guest house will be allowed in patio homes and townhomes. That's currently not allowed under R2 district. If you think of the traditional townhome, almost as a zero lot line, there's not space for that secondary guest house. In this case, they're wanting to find a way to incorporate that or have the option to. Under the C2 district, you'll have a continuing care facility or nursing home would be allowed. Normally, those would be conditional uses in C2. No changes to C3. And then mixed use, they did add back basically all the single-family uses that mixed use does not allow typically. They want to be able to incorporate whether that's single-family home next to a true mixed-use building, lot by lot. Obviously, how they manipulate those and where they put those is up to them. But they are asking for those land use changes. Getting into the site design and development standards, the R2 district, we'll kind of go through the different housing types. The duplex, they're requesting a 4,000 square foot lot. The standard would be 6,000. 50-foot width, standard would be 60. They mentioned there's gonna be a lot of community open space. So some of these, instead of a traditional lot where the lot fronts the street, they're gonna have common space up to the buildings. So a lot of these would be, basically the building footprint is your lot. The common space would be the typical setback area, and then your public street from there. So all the residential districts, they're asking for reduced setbacks for that purpose so that they can incorporate those mixed use, or excuse me, the open space areas into the communities. Townhome with reduced, yes.
All of the residential areas, including the phase one, they're asking for reduced setbacks?
Yes. There is not a specific section to the estate lots, so it falls into that same category.
So there are no actually estate lots, it's R2.
It's R2. And as they pointed out, given the topography, they would not be able to build, very dense development up there. Townhomes, again, reduced the footprint of the lot, since it is gonna be basically the footprint of the home, from 3,000 to 1,200 square feet, a maximum height of 45 feet. The small lot, single family dwelling, from 3,300 feet to 2,400 square feet. Again, 45-foot height. The patio homes from 4,000 to 3,000 square feet, and single family from 4,500 down to 4,000 square feet. They are going to allow access to the collector that's within the development. They're not allowing access to the arterial, direct access for residential.
Say that again, please.
The interior collector would allow residential access directly to the collector street. The arterial will not have direct access. Let me get my pointer up here. So the arterial that runs through the property from 16 to 173, each residential lot cannot have direct access to that street. They'd have to come off a side street.
There won't be any homes on the arterial.
The internal collector that they have that loops through here, they would be allowed to have direct access to those. So comparison with Comanche Trace would be Comanche Trace Drive. By our current code, since it is a collector, you would not have homes fronting on that. Obviously, Comanche Trace does have some, as it was entitled into the old code, but they did request that, to allow that. The R3 district, they're actually requesting the R3 standards instead of the mixed-use standards. That gets into how they're treating that open space and some different setbacks. The C2 district, they're requesting 15-foot setback for the arterial. Otherwise, front, side, and rear would be 0 setbacks. Some amendments to the maximum height when adjacent to residential property. No prohibition of second-story windows. Minimum parking is a slight deviation from ours. Ours is 1 space per 300 square feet. They're basically at 1 space for 333 square feet. So slightly reduced parking ratio for the commercial areas. The outdoor storage would allow for shipping containers. The C3, I'll make one recommendation that they have a 15-foot setback to the arterial. Otherwise, they can have 0 as requested. And of course, the amendments to the land use plan, similar to any PD, they can make minor amendments to the plan. Any major amendment, as they're defining as 10% of change on the land use plan, comes back to the Planning Commission and City Council for approval. So the recommendation based on their proposal, again, the 15-foot setback for anything along an arterial for commercial, recommending a 10-foot setback for any residential property that is adjacent to side or rear to the arterial. The commercial setbacks with no minimum setback, recommending they add a corner site distance, so that if you did have a building that's close to the street at the intersection, that building would have the corner clipped off, basically for visibility for that intersection. And any minor amendments would be administratively approved or go to maybe deferred P&Z and City Council. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
You want us to ask our questions during the public hearing or outside of the public hearing? Does that matter?
Go ahead and have your questions now. I may answer some of the public questions as well.
I have quite a few questions, but I'm going to start with my builder friend down here. Do you have any questions, Kevin?
Probably follow up some of yours. I don't have it right this second, but I'm sure we'll have some.
Cliff?
Not yet.
David?
No, nothing.
Ron, you got anything you want to ask before the public hearing? Or?
I'll listen for now.
I've got a question. How wide is that road gonna be, the arterial?
The arterial is the standard arterial section, 100-foot wide right-of-way.
Okay.
2 lanes each direction, so full build-out if you think of like Holdsworth Drive.
Okay.
I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask a few of them before we get to the public hearing. You're the land planner, sir?
Yes, sir.
What projects have you done? Have you done projects like this in Texas?
I've done projects. No. Well, I got to be honest with you. I've been doing city planning for the last 30 years.
Yes,
I was
sir.
a principal with AECom in San Francisco for 23 years, where I led their master planning and urban design studio. So I have worked on master plan communities pretty much throughout the western U.S. in Phoenix, Arizona, California, Idaho, Utah, frankly, all over the world. So
Okay, so I understand that. Have you done a master plan community like this master plan community? Have you?
Yes.
Okay, so you've done that in other places.
Yeah, in fact, so again, to back up a little bit on that, over the course of time, we have worked on master plan communities for, I think, a pretty interesting cross-section of builders. Some people being merchant home builders that are the national home builders who want to get in a lot of homes. We've also done quite a number of master plan communities for what we characterize as legacy projects, where home builders have the desire to build something very special in their community, so it's custom tailored. So in the process, we've had the good fortune of crossing that bridge back and forth between something that, again, is incredibly market-driven, whereas something that is more, I would almost say, driven by ideology or vision.
So I'm looking at this master plan and these different neighborhoods. We have heard that the master plan for this is approximately 1,700 units. Is that?
Give or take, yeah, it's a little less.
On 480 plus or minus acres.
Give or take.
Do you guys have a plan for phase one, which is what you call estate lots, for
Yes.
each one of these different neighborhoods, for the multifamily, for the 55 and over? Do you have a plan for how many lots or how many residences are gonna be in each one of these?
We do.
You do. Can you break
we've-
that down can you give me, you can go you wanna go to phase one, which is, what y'all call estate lots, it's
Right.
R2. Can you tell me how many lots you have planned in there, the sizes of the lots?
Yeah, up on that hillside, particularly in the area that you're characterizing, we've got a total of about 120 lots, 120. And of those 120 lots, the vast majority, in fact, I think I could ask Anthony, because I don't remember off the top of my head, the 120 lots are 3/4 acre lots. So those are, I believe, 110 to 115 wide by about 340 to 350 feet deep. And you'll see we say plus or minus. What we did not want to do in there was hilltop that site and slap down a bunch of lots. Instead, we went a different route, and you'll see the way you can see that topography, right? If you look at this topography, you can see areas that are more or less well-suited for development. By that I mean areas that are generally flatter. Within those areas, we are proposing to fan lots. So you step lots up the hills. And where there are valleys, you sneak the road through the valley rather than cutting up the steepest part of the mountainside. And then I'm sorry, there are a lot of units, and I don't have the exact unit counts down, but I know pretty well that area in particular. As you then get closer to what we've characterized as the South Village, that's along a drainage. On the yellow side of the South Village, or on the yellow side of the Phase 1 project, those are bigger lots. Those are, I think, a minimum of 65 feet in width, up to 85 feet in width, and then about 120, well, actually, I take that back. There's a family of 70s that are 150 feet deep up there. So what I'm getting at is the yellow area, because it is the steeper area, receives lots from maybe as small as 65 by about 110 to the minimum 3/4 and up.
The lots and I'm sure a lot of people here from Comanche Trace are concerned about the lots that are going to abut the Comanche Trace development on the upper end of La Cumbre. Can you give us an idea what those lots are gonna be? And
I can be very precise about those. Those are all the larger lots. Those are all the 3/4 acre lots. And what I'm wanting to do is walk up to this drawing and point. Yeah.
He's got it
You
on.
can feel me. You can feel me doing this. So if we look at this road, it's a bit of a misnomer. What's called Collector Road A, if you're not using ITE standards, that road is a connect road, and the purpose behind that road is to connect our left side to our right side. It is not intended to be a big thoroughfare. It's a quiet country road that goes through the hill, which is why we were requesting some homes fronting on that road. So that takes us up the hill. As we then work our way to the adjacent neighborhoods, we work our way through this topography.
Maybe it'd be better if you went over there and used the.
I can drive the mouse if you wish.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for that.
That'd be great.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is one of those things. And again, we've been staring at it long enough. I'm more than happy to make do with this mouse to figure out what we're doing. Okay, if we start with the lower end of the hill, you can see there's a knoll here. There's a knoll over there. And then up next to our neighbors, there's a hilltop there. And what we're proposing to do is sneak roads between that steep topography and around the outer edges of that knoll, so that on our side, the lots between this property line and that street are about 340 to 350 feet deep. So in other words, what you're getting is a lot that is, again, a 3/4 acre lot. It's not, there are a lot of reasons to not bring density up there. There are reasons of consideration to your neighbors, and people are going to get annoyed if you do that. But if you're familiar with construction and you get into grading and earthwork, it's a bad idea.
Right.
We didn't want to get into that, so we stuck away from that. And then in this area, there's an interesting area down here. Our drainage comes through the site. It actually goes off the property onto the neighbor's property, then comes back on and flattens out. For that area, this whole corner, we wanted to retain that as open space. Part of it is vineyard and part of it's community garden. And it's not huge, but I want to say it's 5 or 6 acres, give or take. It's big enough that so why would we do that? It's a good opportunity to create a node for our open space. It's a good opportunity to maintain our on-site drainage network. And it's a really good opportunity to be a good neighbor.
Do you have, in the area of the R2 abutting Comanche Trace, there's been conversation between buffers and setbacks. Are you going to, what will be the setback off the back property line for the home constructions along the Comanche Trace buffer? Have you got that set up yet?
On this case, yes and no. The lots, no. I'll be more direct. The lots are shown, again, at about 110 feet wide on the street frontage, about 350 feet deep. We have been, for calculation purposes, showing a couple hundred feet. And when I say calculation purposes, that means trying to figure out, well, what is the actual net development area within the site? So by characterizing 200 feet, we're saying there's the back of the fence on the neighboring property, and then there's what would be the rear of a building, and it's about 200 feet.
So you anticipate the closest construction to be 200 feet off the back property line?
With the, yes and no. There's an area here, which I'm not sure,
I'm very familiar with it, yes.
Oh, well, no, I'm saying, can you see?
Yeah, I
the
see
little-
it, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Can you see the cursor?
Yes, sir.
We've got about 8 lots there that are 120 feet deep, so they would be closer. And the reason they're closer in that area is because the terrain is flatter.
And what would you anticipate the setback off the back property line for the houses there?
Those are deeper. Those are in the order of maybe 40 feet. Just because, again, what happens is, if you look at the hierarchy of lots, you wind up having a case where when you're in the steep hills, the improved lot in a steep hill is largely left up to the individual home buyer. So if you're building a lot, if you buy a lot, you have to hire a contractor and an architect and go out on that lot and build a custom home to fit on your lot. And that's in the steep hillside areas. As you work your way down the hill and the terrain gets flatter, that scenario changes a little bit, so that eventually you get to the point where there are flat lots where you can come in or as a home builder, you can come in and build homes. But that area in particular is not much of that.
The rest of my questions I'll get to after the public hearing. Anyone else before I open the public hearing? I'm gonna open the public hearing, and then we'll get to your ability to speak and your questions. We need you guys to be on the public hearing for your questions, okay? Understand? You're gonna get to ask your questions. We're gonna do it during the public hearing.
Okay.
I'm gonna open the public hearing right now, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna open the public
understand.
hearing at 6:08. I'm gonna go through, I've got a list of speakers. I'm gonna go through the speakers. Once I get through the speakers, we'll get into the question phase, because maybe during the speaking, some of the questions will get answered. I'm gonna start with Mr. Ronnie Carroll.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Ronnie Carroll, and I live at 377 Lacumbre in Kerrville.
Yes, sir.
And I'd just like to voice my opinion about this development. I know many of us moved to Kerrville because it was a quaint little hill country town. We've all seen the growth. We've all seen the real estate boom. We know growth is inevitable. And our city has become a quaint little medium-sized hill country town. I believe that the majority of the people in Kerrville, the citizens, don't want Kerrville to become a large hill country metropolis. It's my opinion, and I was a home builder in Houston for 29 years, that when a town of 25,000 is considering a development that was going to add about 20% of their population, it should be made and studied deliberately and cautiously. We now have a Lennar Home subdivision underway, and I'm sure you guys have other subdivision plats that are coming before you, especially with the building boom. My question, with an increase in the population of the size we're talking about with this development and the others combined, will our city be able to adequately provide both infrastructure and city services? And I mean from a personnel standpoint and also a budgetary standpoint. I'm pretty sure growth is here to stay, unless we encounter a recession, as some people are predicting. However, sometimes our natural resources, such as water, limit our ability to grow. I hope that our city leaders and all the leaders in the Hill Country will be vigilant in preserving this precious asset. And consider adding this many homes, businesses, and the other homes coming in, what is it going to do for Kerrville's future water supply? I would certainly hope and ask the Planning Commission to slow the process down so that other citizens besides River Hill and Comanche Trace can study, digest, and bring their own opinions to our city leaders. And we respectfully ask you to delay the vote. And this is not in my prepared notes, but I know a lot about lot density, lots per acre. And again, this is my opinion. A city the size of Kerrville, when they start amending the city charter, and when they start allowing patio home lots, small lots, zero lot lines, townhomes, it can't be good for a small city. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Roger. I really can't address everything, but I can address the infrastructure and the concurrency issues, and I don't believe that this is such a long process. It goes through the P&Z, whatever we do, if we recommend or don't recommend or postpone or whatever, this still has to go to the city council. And once the process, let's say that everything goes through and we get the changes we want and this gets approved and it starts in the development phase, nothing can be developed if there is not adequate water and sewer capacity for the amount of people, if there's not adequate road concurrency for the amount of trips that this development's gonna put on the streets. You know that, you've dealt with that. So my hope would be, and my opinion is that planning services will review everything as this is a process. This is not a development that happens overnight, and I would believe that whatever gets approved or disapproved, or whatever happens, they still have to come back with each plan for each development. And that still has to be approved by planning services, probably comes through P and Z to city council. And if there is not sufficient water, if there's not sufficient sewer capacity, if there's not sufficient road capability, then it will be cut down. And that's my opinion. I've done a lot of real estate development, and I think that's the way. Kevin could probably speak to that. It's better than me, but I think that's the way that this will work. I appreciate your concerns, and I mean,
Yeah.
this is about all of us. We all of us up here live in Kerrville, and we're all in the mode of trying to protect the small town atmosphere. But you're like you said, growth is coming, and we need to manage it.
If I have questions, since I had the floor, should I ask?
If you have a question, ask it, Ronnie.
Okay. I think you said the developer was gonna build all the houses. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you said the developer was gonna build all the houses in this subdivision?
That's not what I said. I said we would develop and build some of them, not all.
Okay, but you said we're not gonna have any tract builders.
That's not our intention, exactly. It's not
Okay, that's not your intention. Now, my second question is, when you start constructing single-family homes, are you gonna start the vineyard? Are you gonna build the parks? Are you gonna build the amenities, clubhouse, all at the beginning, just?
It's all gonna be done in phases. It doesn't come out of a shotgun all at one time. It's gonna take many years to develop this project.
Yeah, I knew that, but they're gonna let the planning commission know which amenities you're gonna start immediately and which you're not going to. I say this because I've had subdivisions, when they started selling houses, things slowed down. They never built the community center. They never built a swimming pool. They never built whatever. So, you know, and I'm trusting you people and you to, you know, when you start it, all the promises and the amenities will be, some of them be, so we can see that it's viable. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Sean Berner? Sean Berner. Sorry, sir.
No, that's fine, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to address some of these issues.
Where do you live, sir?
I live at 3708 La Cumbre Circle.
Okay.
So we're down in the area where you said that I'd have a house 40 feet away from my back property. Right? So I'm not too happy about that. So, the Kerr County lead has called this the largest planned development in Kerrville history. And, you know, we heard about this about a month ago. And our concern is that this process is rushed. We, you know, for those of us who live on La Cumbre, we don't understand the process in which decisions are made. So obviously emotions have been running high, which is not helpful. So we, you know, one of the things we'd like to do is, because we don't understand the process, we'd like to understand that this isn't going to be a rush decision that's going to be made tonight, sent to the city council with approval. So can we just sort of slow down so we can digest it? I'm grateful that the developer has provided us a vision of what they want to build. That's helpful to us so we can understand it better, so that we have a clearer vision of what you want, that it's not going to be something that we really don't want, that it sounds to me something like maybe we do want this. But we'd like to digest this. We'd like to get a copy of this presentation if possible. And it's already been answered whether you've done this type of development somewhere else. And you've worked on master plan communities throughout the western US, I understand that, but not particularly this type. So this is something new that you're trying. Go ahead.
Now, we've worked on quite a variety of master plan communities. I was being very clear about geography, I'm sorry to say. We have worked on communities with amenities that have ranged from, some communities are specifically open space communities. So we did a project about a year and a half ago up in Coeur d'Alene, right on the Spokane River. It's a big site. It's about 2/3 of the size of this, about a 300-acre site. The story there was, don't disrupt the land. It was very clear. It's very densely forested, very steep. We've worked on projects that are more driven by some of the national home builders that we know who build retirement communities, where their amenity-driven attitude has to do with very specific requirements for ponds and lakes. And I won't mention their names, but you know who they are, the big national
Home building chains.
Yes, well, particularly age-qualified groups, where they've got a very strict requirement for open space. Other more market-focused communities, also for national home builders that have amenity programs, are very driven by intense programming. This project is driven more by intense vision. The guys really want to do something. I mentioned to you legacy projects at the outset of this, the idea of, of a transactional project versus a legacy project. Right now, we're pretty much in the legacy realm.
What does that mean? I don't understand.
Well, by transactional project, I mean, and there's really nothing wrong with these, but I'm drawing this distinction because it might be helpful for you to understand. If we were on a site that was dead flat and 10 minutes away from the major urbanized area, and it was perfectly square, it's hard for me as a designer to encourage my client to say, hey, let's loosen it up and let's have a park system and let's have trails, because they're gonna say, look, we're right next to city X. We know what the densities are and we want those houses. So that is a transactional project.
Okay.
A legacy project is where these guys tell me, well, take a look at the site. It's a remarkable site. We've got some terrain and topography. So, okay, that's, good. Oh, and by the way, we want to be really much more innovative than others in terms of housing types. And that is really important. What they have characterized to us about the cottage court, for example, is a pioneering idea. It's a great idea. Those are being explored nationally, and it's a pleasure to have something to do with. This gentleman mentioned townhomes. This is not the town. We have done townhome projects where there are a lot of townhomes. This is not one of them. This is where we're saying, okay, we're going to have a family of townhomes that are organized around the park, and then we're going to go into a different housing type. So that is what I'm getting at by legacy. In other words, the community character is more about the bigger vision than it is quarterly earnings, if you follow me. If you've done work with, publicly traded companies, we're driving for the quarterly earning, which means if I can shave that density by 2 points, that helps the project. And in this case, they're saying, well, maybe we drop a lot or two and it's a better neighborhood. Because, again, got to be careful with language. Working for a broad cross-section of people, sometimes you are doing a project that is market-driven. And we are, we're meeting the demand. And I think this gentleman mentioned, it's a hot market. You go. Or there's a market that says, hey, this is a hot market, but it's also a great place, and we want to do something different.
Okay.
So that's why, and you had asked the comment about that corner. To be very clear on that corner, on that edge, you know where that creek comes in.
Yeah.
The creek comes across, and then it goes across.
Yeah, the lot next to me.
It goes onto the
creek comes
adjacent
down.
property, then it pops back. That whole area's got a whole different set of setbacks. It's more complicated than that, and I was trying to be courteous to the planning commission and try to reply. It's not as easy as it looks. It's not, 50 houses slammed up against that wall. There are 8 houses on an edge, and then it goes up into 8 houses on an edge, meaning 8 houses that are fairly close to one another, and then it goes into the much more expansive open space.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, sorry.
Thank you. So the last thing is that, a number of us have submitted written comments because we felt like we were under a time deadline. We felt like this process was rushed because we simply didn't know. There's a lot of uncertainty associated with it. So what happens to the written comments that we have submitted?
Everything that I have here today, we're talking about. I have no written comments.
Because I submitted written comments about this afternoon, maybe around, it was this morning, 11 a.m. or so.
You've got a packet there, Mike.
Are they? Not in my packet, they're not. have written comments? Now, wait a minute, here we go right here. All right.
Mr. Sigerman, one thing you could do is ask the speaker to summarize those right now and get those into the record. I understand there's like 12 pages of comments.
Yeah.
But clear, you know, I think with
Might be
some
easier.
diligence.
Do you have your
to do that.
comments with you?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
So, you know, from what we heard, it sounded to me, initially hearing about this program, that this seemed to violate some of the sections of the Kerrville Planning Code. If not specifically the letter, but the spirit of the law. From the presentation we've seen, I'm a little bit more encouraged that that's not the case, that you're trying to do something interesting, you're trying to do something creative. This is not just a cookie cutter development. And I would, you know, I'm encouraged by your presentation. As I said, I want to slow down this process so we can understand and digest it, because this might be something that we want. We understand that there's going to be development that's happening, you know, but we want it to be the right kind of development that's compatible with Comanche Trace and with River Hill. So, you know, I'm concerned about that. For the thoroughfare between Highway 16 and 173, I'm not in favor. My understanding was the city was going to be paying for part of this.
No.
I appreciate that clarification. I'll drop that one then. We would like there to be parks and open spaces adjacent to our property. It sounds to me like there's going to.
On the street, that would be a council decision. That's not related to zoning at all.
Right.
So regardless of how that street's built, we're just talking about the zoning.
Right.
So whether we zone in the PD or not, whether council pays for a portion of that road or TxDOT or the county or anybody, those two are not.
There's
related.
no commitment by the city to pay for any roads.
That is correct.
That's what I said.
Thank you.
Is there any understanding that there might be considered an extension of 534 State Road and all of the stuff that goes with that?
I don't think that's the case, but you can more.
Let's keep it one at a time, but as far as this road being designated as Loop 534, that would be a TxDOT decision.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything.
That's not a decision that we make. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So another request I had was that parks, open spaces, and other development that doesn't adversely affect our property value be put adjacent to our property. If housing was to be put next to our property, we would request a 100-foot setback, and that housing be limited to a one-story house, not two-story. I believe the developer, you know, has met with our neighbor, Mr. Makadas, in a good faith in trying to discuss this project and move it forward. I would just like a chance to digest it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not making any decisions, but I just need everyone to fully understand that we can want what we want. But as I've indicated before, the state of Texas is a very large private property rights state. And within the guidelines of what the zoning allows, we can't put our wish list on them for 100-foot setbacks or whatever we're looking for. I understand what you're saying. But when this is all said and done, there's gonna be a plan, and the truth is, once this is all said and done, this has to go to the planning process, and it has to go through all the things that Drew and the Planning and Zoning Services have to approve, and that's a long process, and it gets way more into detail, and you guys will have another chance to take a look at this if it gets approved, when it gets approved, as it goes through the process, because this is simply the very beginning of what's gonna happen.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, Steve Wilson.
Excuse me while I hobble, I just had my knee replaced. But I too am more encouraged before I came, you know, now than I was when I came in the front door.
Yes, sir.
And as you could tell by my jumping in on a question, I know that the Kerrville 2050 plan has got some semblance of where we want 534 to go someday.
That's correct.
And this is remarkably almost in the area but very inconvenient in terms of really being able to be useful. But I'm worried about truck traffic and anything else that goes through that arterial. And I would think you guys would be really worried about it too. I mean, it's really close by enough to make shortcuts for lots of different kinds of traffic. That doesn't even count the 5,000 new people we're gonna bring in to that area, roughly. It's a big change for the south side of Kerrville and its traffic plan. And I'm not so sure that, that somehow we ought to combine the thinking with this big move, this project, and see if we can't do something about the loop. Well, I mean, it may be that they go together, but it has to be built the right way.
The street will be built the right way. The street has to meet the city's requirements. There's no question on the quality of construction and the specifications of the construction of the streets, the curbs, all that type of thing. That's.
But if it becomes Highway 534, the state needs to get involved in it.
Well, if it was to, and again, Mike might speak to that more than I'm not even sure we need to discuss that, but if TxDOT was to decide that, then it would be out of our hands. And I would assume their requirements would be at least as stringent as the city's, probably more.
Probably more.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Betty?
Hi, I'm Betty Pace, and we are building on
And what is your
Lacumbre,
address?
3561 Lacumbre. And we moved from San Antonio to move into the hill country like everybody. I would have to say I am a little more encouraged after what I've heard. But with that encouragement, I have a lot of skepticism, which I hope is healthy skepticism. I worked for a very large corporation for 25 years, did a lot of presentations like these gentlemen have done. My concern is I don't know the process here in this city. So I don't know how we hold someone accountable, number one. I realize this is a plan. I understand that. I'm so grateful that you showed us something that was, a lot of it's, I like. A lot of it concerns me still, especially when we ask for details. And I understand you have more details that you're probably not comfortable saying yet, but they're in your plan. So my concern is, I know this is just about zoning and that's really all we're doing right now. But we did just change it from the ag to city, or that's what they came in first. I understand this is the first part of the process. I would just like these other gentlemen that have spoken, to slow it down if that's what's needed so that we learn a little more about what's happening. Or I would like to know what the process is for us to move forward so that we can really voice our opinions. I don't feel comfortable really saying anything specific. I don't know enough now. I do know that I have a concern because I'm on one of those lots that will have a probably small setback, and that doesn't make me happy, but I know that's life. But I would like it to be as nice as it can be, and I think that's important for us as neighbors to all want that, and I just want to have a part in that process. And that's really all I can tell you at this point, and that's why I'm asking for it to be slowed down, or at least explain to me how I can be involved.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hi, Drew.
Hello. Since we have had a couple questions, I'll kind of explain that
Go
process. So they've gone through a portion of the annexation process. We talked about that last month. That case has not, or the annexation has not gone to city council yet. Once they file the planned development district request, which is what we're talking about tonight, we're going to move those to council concurrently. So that it'll go to council for annexation and planned development district zoning instead of ag. If the zoning is approved, they'll continue working on their due diligence and their engineering plans, starting with the subdivision plat, which is approved by the planning commission. That'll be a preliminary plat showing a more detailed preliminary layout. Then they can start building phases through infrastructure design, infrastructure installation, final plat, and then building permits for actual buildings. Obviously, there's a lot of engineering and design through that process. That's on their side to do. Once they get that subdivision plat prepared, then it would come before the planning commission for approval.
Right.
As those plats are brought in, our staff review the plat to make sure it's consistent with this document or whatever it gets approved for the zoning, standard engineering specifications, subdivision code, et cetera. So each of those are regulatory review. Again, planning commission's involved in some of that. The engineering, obviously, we have our engineering standards for all the utilities and infrastructure installation, or design, installation, and acceptance into the city system. So that's where a lot of the details and questions we've had fall under those existing regulations. They're not gonna move into that design stage until the zoning entitlement is in place. So I hope that answers a few questions.
One of the things I would say, I live in Comanche Trace. I've been on the planning commission now for a year. I was on it before, and I can tell you that this is the exact process that Comanche Trace goes through when they open a new phase and they have to plat it, because we've set up here in just, I don't know, a month ago or so, we approved a plat for the new development in the back. And they had to go through the same thing, and they had to come in with a plat that showed the lots. And this developer will have to do that down the road, and you will all get a chance to take a look at that as the process goes through. So this is not, different from what Comanche Trace Development went through when they first started. And I would guess that back in when Comanche Trace started, 2001 or 2002, everybody that lived out there on the highway across from Comanche Trace was doing the same thing you're doing. We don't want all this development out here. It's gonna create traffic, it's gonna increase the population, and they came through and probably said exactly some of the same things we're hearing now. So, this is a long process, and you will be notified all along the way. All right, Gabriel Alonso?
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Gabriel Alonso, and I'm not looking for the man who killed my father. But I live at 3533 La Cumbre. And of course, when we learned about this, it was big concern. Because we look out of the backyard and see all these beautiful hills, which is one of the reasons we live here. But, I'm not going to repeat myself because it has already been elucidated before. So for the sake of time, I'm going to just condense it to two main points. My main concern will be water. The water that is where is this going to come from? The aquifer? What's going to happen? I mean, do we have enough? This is a very precious resource in the hill country. It's a big concern of mine. The other one is the long list of exemptions the developer is asking to do so that they can accommodate their plan, which, by the way, is much better than I expected. It's beautiful. But still, why so many changes? Once you make a change, you never go back. So that's it. Everything else has already been addressed. So I just stop there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Another Pace?
Michael.
So you were relegated to second place?
Well, I'm a husband, of course I'm second place. And we're building at 3561. And I will say, it really does sound like a really neat development. It sounds like something I would see in a really nice upscale community in Austin. But there's a reason I don't live in Austin. And why a lot of us have moved from Austin. We don't want the population density. We don't want this. I mean, this is a nice, quiet, small community. And they're looking to dump 5,000 residents in 480 acres, which is, 20% of the city in a small area. I'm not worried about what's going to be behind us. It's probably going to look great. There's going to be something behind us anyways one day. I am very concerned and very opposed to having
all the 5,000 people on the roads. Sidney Baker South is a nightmare now. We double the traffic or triple that traffic. There's not going to be much you can do about it. There just isn't. There isn't a place to put things. And they're going to come in and build this beautiful place and then dump everything onto us to figure out later. The whole area out there, when you drive outside of the city, it's relaxed, it's pretty, it's semi-rural. CT did a good job in keeping that. It's just, this is going to make everything very different. And on top of all of the people that live there, now we're going to have all of the businesses that are going to come in. The arterial that they put in isn't going to help a whole lot. It's not going to keep people from going down River Hill because it's not going to be very convenient. It's just going to dump more people, and we're going to have more people on 173, and probably a lot more are just going to go down Sidney Baker. So it's going to be a mess, and we're going to be the ones dealing with that. If they would say we're going to come in and put a small community in here, no problem. 5,000 people is nuts. That's on top of all of the other people that are coming into this town, of which, of course, I'm one of.
Yes, sir, you are.
And CT, they've said, has 125 homes that have been either built or will be built by the end of this year, in the last 2 years, which is a whole lot. Then we have the new community that's coming in. Then we have all of the other things. So what do we have by 2030, are we going to be 35,000 plus people in this town? You can have growth, but you don't want to be Austin, where you just have too much growth and you have bad growth and things aren't done very well. And I really would bet you that if you ask the people of the city, there would be a strong majority would say that's just too many people. It's just too quick. It's just too much. And the roads that they're building, one of the things that Sean was getting at is it's not how well the road itself is. It's just not very amenable for being used as a really good cut through, a good anything. It's going to cause problems down the road because now you've got, there's no easy way to move through. And that in itself is going to cause bottlenecks later that's going to have to be addressed. And we all talk about, well, we have water. We do until we don't. And we keep, we can just say, hey, we have water, and then one day we're not going to have water because we're going to be continuing to draw it down and we go through a long drought. And this city has gone through long droughts. Eventually, it's going to be a real problem. They won't be here to deal with that. We will be. So I'm really opposed to having that many people in that small of an area, in an area that there's not going to be a real way to handle all of the traffic and all of the everything that's going to come with that in that area. So.
Thank you, sir. Betty Ferguson? Barbara, but it says, oh, I'm sorry, Barbara, my bad. I don't know you as Ferguson.
No, I know. I have a couple of concerns. I live in Comanche Trace as well, but my main reason for being here is not because of my close proximity to this, but rather what it means to the entire city of Kerrville and everyone who's served by Kerrville Services. I have to agree with what the last gentleman said. It's a lot of people in a small area, but first and foremost, my concern is the water. The city has tried to address that in a couple different ways that have not been successful. A recent well was drilled to try to bring in more, but a recent study by Groundwater, I want to give these entities the right name, but it was the Headwaters Groundwaters Conservation District, And they did a study, or the Kerr County Aquifer Study, and red flags showed up about the Ellenberger, the new well, and what was happening to the water tables. In essence, we've got a new well that has been touted to help our water situation, but it's actually drawing down water in the other wells. And so we're all drawing from the same source. We do not have more water than we had before it was drilled. And just a couple of years ago, there was a housing development that wanted to go in north of River Hill. And water became an issue at that point. And from what I understand, that was one of the big reasons that development did not go through, because the city could not show sufficient water to handle that development. Now, nothing has essentially changed from then until now. And now we're talking an additional 1,200 homes, living spaces, plus the commercial, and Lennar is going in. And this impact is much, much greater than just a few people down on the south side of town. This is everybody who's on the Kerrville water system. It affects all of us. And I think a lot more time needs to be spent fixing our water issue before we even consider anything of this size. And by the way, I think it's a cool plan too.
Michael Ross.
So I moved here 10 years ago from Austin. Wife had lived there for 30 years. I lived there for 20 years. Came here because the hospital recruited me. I've worked at the hospital for last 10, probably another 5 years, and then I want to retire. And I always figured I would retire here. Bought a lot on Comanche Trace, bought a lot on La Cumbre. 9 years ago, moved in our house a little over 6 years ago. Really enjoy living there. We've got a big lot because it's on the edge of the development. It's an awesome lot. We really enjoy living there. I heard what they presented, and that just doesn't sound like someplace where I would want to live if I was moving to Kerrville, and it's not someplace I want to live next to either. So we'll have to deal with that as it comes out. I'm concerned about the water issue too, but I'm also concerned about the traffic, because I'm one of those guys that was in an accident at 534 and 173 a couple years ago, and luckily I didn't get severely injured. My car did get towed, and I got a new car out of it. But I drive 173 to work every day, and there's more and more traffic in that intersection at 534 it's challenging, because everybody turning off to go to the schools. There's always one person who thinks they can turn left in front of you. You probably deal with it driving in 173 also, and
We all do.
I mean, every day I'm sitting there driving thinking, is that person going to try and turn in front of me like that other lady did? And it's a real challenge. I echo a lot of the things that have already been said by my neighbors, and I don't want to repeat them all, but water and traffic are my two big concerns.
Thank you, sir. Tony McCadis.
I'm glad I'm coming up last because all the good questions have been asked already, so I got to dig deep. But I think I share the concerns with most of my neighbors here, is the process is bewildering. I found online, by drilling down into the planning division, down, found this drawing and this list of changes to the zoning, all the amendments, pages of changes to the zoning. Nobody here has had time to digest it. Some of my friends, Ronnie over there, who's a developer, made a really good point. But Ronnie, we're looking at so many changes to the code, and everybody's saying why we came to Kerrville, why we're here, because this is what we expected. We expected a small town values, and discipline. This is not discipline. This is Disneyland. Disneyland in Kerrville. It's beautiful. I agree. The planning, the concept is good. It's good, but not now and not here. I would like to discuss here, I'll diverge from that, I made my point. But what is the process? Mike, you said that when it leaves here, it goes to the city, and then we can go and look at things. But if it leaves here with these changes to the zoning, the city's gonna come back and say, why did you make these changes? Or why are you making these changes? Why? Why? Did Comanche Trace get this? No. I had to build my lot. My lot, I'll walk over here, is on the corner here, right the very corner. It's a 3-acre lot. And the reason it's a 3-acre lot, not because they were selling this big lot, as Mike, you know, it is because 2 acres were unbuildable. I had to go to the, I had to go and appeal, my assessment, because I'm saying, look, yes, it's a 3-acre lot. I could only build on actually less with the setbacks and everything for drainage on 1 acre, just like everybody else in my neighborhood. And one of the things was I had where all these lines are showing, the terrain. I had to build on back behind what they call the 1620 elevation because of the creek that's down there. And that creek has been there for a long, long time. I'm looking at the other side, the purple here. They say that, well, there'll be a buffer there that'll be 4 to 6 acres. Won't cry. What's 4 to 6 acres when you're looking at this? And where is the protection for the creek? Unless they go back to the 1620 line, like I had to, like my neighbor had to, why do they get an exception? Why 4 pages of amendments and exceptions? Stick to it, that's my point. You guys do your job, stick to it. And I'm glad to see you're having debate on this, because I'm the one that accused of not having debate. Because I've come here too many times, see something come up here, and then you guys just make a motion. People talk, and then you just make a motion. There's no debate, no debate. Did you guys, every one of you, did you get a copy of all those pages of sent in written information that people sent in? There were 7 pages. Drew, you were saying, let's get them in the record.
Well, I think
Did every one of you up there get a copy?
I think they came in, some of them came in this afternoon.
Well, some of them didn't come in this afternoon. Did you get a copy of any of them? Do you review them before? Are you prepared to vote on this tonight? You are. You're prepared to vote on it.
Tony, I don't want to argue with you because
You don't
there's-
have to argue. You have to answer the
There's a
question.
process. I can tell you that I've looked at this for several weeks. I've driven the property. I meet with the planning, the development services before every P and Z meeting. I visit every site. I discuss with Drew everything that's coming up before us. I try to make my decisions on what I think that this is the right thing to do before I get here. And then we have all this conversation and we listen to everyone out there. And that, quite frankly, a lot of times affects what I think. But at the end of the day, what we're charged here on this commission is to do what is the best thing for the city of Kerrville. Not what's the best thing for Mike Sigerman, not what's the best thing for Comanche Trace residents. Maybe the best thing is that. But our responsibility is to listen to what we're presented with, to review everything. We have guidelines we have to go by and make the best decision I can for what I think is the best for the city of Kerrville.
What about the rest of the commission?
They can speak for themselves.
Have they driven it? Have they looked at it? How many hours you spent going through this stuff? We're counting on you guys to be the front line, to protect us, to protect the citizens of Kerrville, to protect the neighbors. And we're just saying, why do they get a better deal than Comanche Trace? Why do they get all these exemptions? Why? How do we review those exemptions? How do we get our input? We've had 0 input. The only reason these people know or saw this thing is I found it on the internet. They had no idea of this stuff going on until tonight. And you're going to vote on it tonight. That's all I have to say.
That is the end. I have no more speakers.
I did send an email in.
Step up, sir.
Yeah.
We're not gonna excuse
I'd like to
you.
read it if I might.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Who are you?
I'm Robert Dozier.
And where do you live, Robert?
115 Lantana.
Okay.
I was born and raised here, first generation. My dad came to teach school in 1959. I was born in 1961. Lantana was, it's the second section of Medina Highway, of the old Medina Highway. When the new Medina Highway was built, it just cut off the corner between Lantana and Liggett Lane. So that's where I got a notification. It was mailed out 28th, 29th, something like that. I was ready to go on vacation, and I called several times. Couldn't get through, couldn't get an answer. But after I got back from my vacation, I talked to Mr. Yeah, that guy right there. Can't remember the name. But yeah, I'd like to read the email first, and then make a few additional comments. So bear with me. She could have blown this up before she copied this off, I'll tell you that. Okay, so yeah, I live at 115 Lantana, and I wish to remind you, first of all, that in your little notification, you did ask my opinion. So I'm opposed to anything commercial that I put my eyes on. Street lights, signs, lighted or unlighted, lights that stay on after 10 p.m. and not on a motion sensor. Opposed to traffic lights. The night sky is a beautiful thing and should be enjoyed undimmed. We love and enjoy the peace and quiet of the rural setting. That peace is already being disrupted by obnoxious and inconsiderate city dwellers escaping the cities, like the ones making use of what is apparently a B&B across the way. They escape the city and disturb the peace with yappy dogs, loud music, if I can hear it, it's too loud, and all manner of yelling and screaming at all hours. They have a pool. We don't need any more of that, and it is my opinion that the bright blue roofs in the valley are an eyesore. Are they gone? Are they going to stay? Don't know. The pavilions down there?
Existing buildings are all gonna be gone.
Oh, hallelujah. So, no further comment on the blue roofs. Okay, they stick out like a sore thumb and are marked against the beauty of the land, so. So keep the noise, the lights, the left turn lanes, speed bumps, and above all, the people on the other side of the hill, and leave us what little peace we still have. Like I say, I was born and raised here, and I consider all y'all like Yankees. Not only Yankees, but the other kind. Y'all stayed. So I don't want to see too much development, but I do want to say that am I right in saying that this parcel of land was part of what River Hill 2 was?
No.
No, this is past the River Hill 2.
Yes, sir.
So the River Hill 2 stopped at the water towers. Now, we expected with River Hill 2 that we were going to get a little bit more development heading our way. So we've been kind of dodging the bullet on that for 45 years. So
Yes, you have.
And Comanche Trace kind of bypassed the River Hill extension. They decided to develop that rather than develop River Hill 2 and this parcel, which was probably been tried to develop. They had plans for it one way or another. So we expect building. We expect more people were going to be coming in. Not quite this much, admit, but I don't want the commercial stuff. It's a nice plan. It's beautiful. I like the larger lots and stuff like that, but I want you to be aware, and the planner seems to be from other parts of the country, and is that?
That's true.
Okay, so, on this back section over here, you see Medina Highway, the little loop right up there. I live up to the left-hand corner of that. I see all the way to the airport through that. I really don't want to see a whole lot of houses, so plant trees above them, so I can't see them.
We've got a lot of trees.
Plant them, put them behind the hill. Don't put them on this side. Accommodate me, come on. On that back line over here where you say there was gonna be a 300-foot setback, and I assume that the houses are gonna be closer up toward the collection road?
A little bit.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
what happens,
Yeah.
if you walk, you know the site, you know
No.
as well as I do,
Yeah.
those hills get pretty steep.
Yeah.
And it's just not that
but-
right to
but
build up there.
Do you understand hill country builders? Are you gonna have control of what they say and do on that? Because they will build hanging over the cliff.
No, they won't.
Yeah, that's part of the deal.
Okay, I just wanna clarify that.
Don't worry.
And also do want to point out that on that curve, a couple times a year at least, somebody's going off that curve and going through that fence. At least a couple times a year. We got a long history of people going off over the embankment.
They wouldn't be inebriated, would they?
No, just going to sleep, going to work. There's a few inebriations, yeah, there is, one guy came through on a Corvette, in the fog, he missed the curve. They air flighted him. So it is probably, I just want you to be aware of that I would say it would need a barrier, but for some reason, the state hasn't put one of those up yet, for some reason.
Thank you,
So,
sir, for all of your input.
Yeah, so that's all I got to say.
Thank
Thank you, I've got to go.
You bet. John?
Thank you, Mike.
You bet.
I've been in contact with you, Mike,
Would
and
you,
Trevor Hyde, and you shed a lot of light on the
Tell me your
subject.
name, John, and where you live.
John Demore.
It's for the record, John.
John Demore, 3598 Montgomery. Anyway, I've been in touch with Mike and Trevor Hyde, who have been shown some light on what's happening here. Your presentation's interesting. Question, you said you built a lot of master plan communities in other parts of the country, like San Francisco, other parts of California, Arizona, high density, high populated areas. Have you ever designed anything in an area this small?
Yeah, going into my background. So as a kid, I started in city planning when I was, actually my idea was to start in single-family construction, and too bad that gentleman left. I grew up in Sonoma County, which is an hour north of San Francisco, and the landscape is strikingly characteristically similar to this, where there are rolling hills, and there are quite a number of oak trees, and they're pretty even. It's remarkable, actually. It's very similar.
Beautiful.
So to get to your point, so I grew up essentially building custom homes in these hills. So where you step up and down, up in Santa Rosa is the city I grew up in, so I'm not, full disclosure here. Yeah, it's the same situation. You got steep hills and flat valleys below, and you have to work within the guidelines, and it's pretty much as simple as that. So if you might have a dream house in mind, it's great, it's the dream, but you're not building it on the top of the hill. You're putting it where, as Nick has said, the design guidelines want you to put it there. And the reason we want to do that is because it is a beautiful landscape, and we see, maybe it's selfish, we see value in that beautiful landscape and don't want to screw it up. And I think so in terms of home building, I've been involved with the construction of a lot of homes, both in terms of master plan community work and even some that I've built, that I've been an equity partner in, and we build, and I've worked as a framer, and so I've touched it. And I guess the point is, when you've done enough of that, that's why this gentleman on this side of the room had asked about the difference between a merchant builder or like a production home builder and a legacy project. And I will argue there's a clear distinction between the two, because if you are, and there's a value in both, by the way, but there is a difference between the two. If we were, I don't know, I wouldn't want to be here tonight if I had to, say with a straight face, we're, grading the whole site out. We're not. That's just not And by the way, that wasn't because I said, don't grade the site out. That's because the development team was very clear. We have a vision for this site, and we want you to help us with that. So yes, funny enough, I have done a lot of work in San Francisco, but I've done work in Healdsburg, and I've done work all over the world. It's been very fortunate. And I would say, that what the blessed thing about that is, man, do you get your eyes opened up? You get your eyes open when you see things. And I think it helps a decision-making process where you can look at a site and say, yeah, I understand the values of this community. I mean, I don't live here, but I understand community values. I think they're extremely important, whether it's here or wherever it is. And you have to be respectful of that. And again, in the right context, be respectful and don't screw it all up. Sorry if that's too direct, but.
It's okay, fine. I moved here in 1973 from San Diego.
Yeah.
Pretty nice place to live, and people ask me why I moved here, and we're glad and thank God every day that we did move here. And one of my first events here, we have Thirsty Thursdays on La Cumbre. Pretty tight group, as you can see here. On my very first Thirsty Thursday, I met Robert Keeble, who asked me if I wanted to go help him shut off the water. So 3 hours later, when my wife was totally embarrassed because I had disappeared, and she thought I was engaged when he brought me back to my house.
Yes.
But I was a banker. He was asking my, input about, and by the way, the property is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's a gorgeous site.
And he's put a lot of time and effort and sweat into that place personally. So it's interesting what's going on now to me.
Well, somebody had mentioned that comment about the creeks and the drains. And if you're familiar with the site, those drainages.
Where we live at the end of La Cumbre, there are some serious drainage issues. We got a culvert one house.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What I'm getting at is that has been, and again, there's topography, there's context, and then there are natural systems. And you have to pay attention to all of those to get it through. And again, from our point of view, keeping those creeks and drainages as a beautiful element, if you want to be selfish about it, it's a value proposition.
Yeah.
The community's better. If you take care of the open space, you got a better community.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Which he provided for a while. He had some other intentions for that place. But he was asking my advice what to do as a banker. And I said, you're at the stage where you need to get a developer involved to get some infrastructure in here, get some roads. You've started some things, but you need to get some infrastructure in here, and then sell it to builders. But I was envisioning like 5 to 20 acre plots, which are becoming very popular around here, near Camp Verde, out toward the ridge, and they're selling like hotcakes at high prices. So that's what I think a lot of us had in mind, what was going to go here. So we see your presentation and your plan, and who was it? Mike Tyson, I think, said, every fighter has a plan until they get punched in the face. Ronnie mentioned we may have, and several pundits, economists are looking at possibly a recession because of what's going on in the world, let alone here. What happens if we have that hiccup here? There's been a lot of development. I've banked a lot of developers, okay? And I see what happens when something goes wrong that's not in the plan. What's the contingency plan for those possible issues in the future to make sure this thing gets built and doesn't flounder like we've seen in other areas of the country? And hopefully it's not going to be here in Kerrville. But yeah, we talked a lot about water. Water certainly is an issue for all of us in Kerrville. But we also we have droughts, and then we have tremendous downpours. What happens to that runoff? I mean, and I trust you guys and Comanche Trace to, get involved in making sure that's all done properly and according to plan. But, there's a lot of flexibility in addition to the exceptions that have already been made. So I think that's what's got us all concerned. And so I'm one of the NIMBYs, and for the benefit of that guy who just left, I'm a real Yankee. But I came to Texas as soon as I could. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you. And Mike, I've been in contact with you, but I've got some written comments that I'd like to
Absolutely.
give to you if I can.
You don't want to
Summarizing.
discuss them, you just want to give them to me?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
thank you, John.
Thanks.
Here, I will do that too. Since y'all don't have them.
I do not have any more speakers signed up except for Mr. Bruce Strachey.
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett Street. I want to start with a question. How many folks here participated in the 2050 plan? Did y'all go to any of the 2050 plan meetings? Really? Only that many? That's very interesting. This plan that these folks have brought is the closest thing to what the 2050 plan has asked for since we adopted it. These guys have looked at the mayor's housing plan that was done in 2019 and looked at what is missing from Kerrville. I'm not saying it's a perfect plan or anything. What I am saying is that these gentlemen have done their homework. They have brought a concept that is consistent with the 2050 plan and the mayor's housing plan, and we have a chamber housing committee that I'm on. We've been working, now for about 6 months, I think, just not quite 6 months, looking for ways to do many of the things that these folks are talking about doing. And so I really think, like many folks have mentioned here tonight, that this is a beautiful, exciting plan. There certainly are some concerns. When I look at it, I see that this is going to take about 10 years to build out, but I don't know if that's in your pro forma or not, and I'm not asking for any secrets, but
I mean, it's like asking how long is a piece of string?
I got it.
So you put your house on the market, how long
I
is it
got
gonna
it.
take to sell it?
Exactly. But it's a phased plan. It's certainly not going to get built in 1 year. There aren't going to be 5,000 new residents next year in Kerrville.
Never,
It's
actually, because it'll never house 5,000 people. That's
Right.
completely wrong.
when you look at the density, like phase one, the density is 1.3 units per acre. Well, that's lower than Comanche Trace's density. Drew, what's the rear setback in Comanche Trace? It's 25 feet, isn't it? 25 feet is the rear setback in Comanche Trace by zone, right? And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about zoning. Looking at the arterial. The arterial is something the city has put on these guys. These guys don't want to build an arterial. 100-foot wide right of way through there doesn't, it may provide some traffic flow and such, but that's something the city is forcing them to do. I doubt TxDOT's interested in that being an state highway, but I couldn't speak to that. But it's definitely on the city plan. It's been on the master thoroughfare plan for over 15 years, to the best of my knowledge. And so that's something that the city's actually telling the developer to do. When I look at your ask for the setbacks, I'm imagining clusters because of the topography and the setbacks and such. And so it's difficult looking at just the zoning without the lot layout to understand why they're asking for the changes in the PD for the setbacks. And so that's something it would be helpful to know what the lot layouts were. And obviously with what you said, you're going after topography. And so we'll see that when the plat maps come and it's time to look at the preliminary and the final plats and all those layouts. That might be a better time to look at the setbacks.
I agree.
It's just a thought.
I agree.
We're only talking about zoning tonight. They'll be doing traffic studies. TxDOT's going to require that. The city's going to require that. Water is my biggest concern. Like with anything, but that's true on any project that we're talking about. Reef's getting ready to bring 400 units to Camp Meeting Creek, and the Graham-Woolgy Group is working on hundreds of units over by the sports complex, and there's stuff all over town. So we definitely need to address water as a city, right? But it is a private property right state, And, you know, the zoning and the PDD, this is probably the best planned PDD that's been brought to this city in 10 years. And I know you haven't been here 10 years, but it's the best one you've seen. It's better than the last one I brought. So I think that this early process, we may want to look at pulling back on a few of the asks until we see the plats. But the zoning looks really good. Going to R2 for this makes a lot of sense with the topography. It allows them to do clusters. It also allows them to do the kinds of housing product that the mayor's housing study identified was missing in Kerrville back 3 years ago. And this is the first project I've seen, and I'm here pretty often, that it actually is trying to do that and address our housing problem. And we have a housing problem. And so anyway, those are my comments. And good luck to you all. I hope it all works out.
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody else before we close the public hearing? And commissioners can ask some questions?
I'd like to add thanks for your listening to us.
That's our job, it's what we do. And we get paid big dollars for it. I believe the printed copy of the presentation, I think you can probably see Drew and he can get you a copy of it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna close the public hearing at 7:16. And it's our turn to have comments, questions, ideas. I'm gonna start with you, Kevin, if you wanna jump into it.
Yeah, just as far as the developers themselves, how long has your development group been together? And how many developments have y'all done?
Well, we formed as a group. I'm sorry, terribly sorry. This is a new company that we formed to do this project. So individually, between the three of us, we've got probably 80 years worth of development experience around the world. And we can give you names of projects if you'd like to see them. But they've been through different entities. But this particular project is one that we're doing together for the first time.
Anything else, Kevin?
That was my main question.
Cliff?
I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think actually what we're supposed to do tonight is one simple thing.
David?
Well, I've heard a lot of concerns and admissions that they're kind of unaware of the procedures. And I think, has been pointed out, people need to keep in mind, this doesn't happen overnight. It's a long development process. There's a long process of reviews and recommendations. And there's a lot of good people that are going to be looking at this stuff.
Rob?
I think my question's been answered already tonight.
Good, thank you.
Couple of questions that, infrastructure questions. This requires a lift station, is that correct, or does it not?
Yes. Yeah, it does. Our engineers here, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, we can.
So you guys are going to fund and build your own lift station for this project?
Yes.
No cost to the city, correct?
Yes.
This, I don't know if this is an appropriate question or not. At this point, I'm understanding that you guys have not gone to the city for any incentives or any assistance with the development?
Conversation we're having with the city at the moment.
Is it something we just don't need to talk about at this point?
Yeah, it's not really germane to the zoning, so that would be left up to city council, because either way, it won't impact the zoning.
Do we know exactly how much footage of road is gonna be built in this project? How much road is gonna be built? Miles or feet, or however you want it?
I don't have that exact.
Okay, so we don't know about the interior. Do you know what is the footage of the road from 173 to 16?
It's a few thousand feet.
You don't know exactly what it is?
I'm sorry.
From the entrance at 173 to 16?
You're talking about the arterial?
Yeah, the main thoroughfare road, what people are talking about, a 4-lane road. We have
It's about a mile and a half.
ballpark cost on that yet, or is that not germane to what we're doing?
No.
I mean, my thoughts, it's an ambitious project. I understand everyone's concerns. We all live here in Kerrville. I understand, I live in Comanche Trace. I'm not, directly impacted by something behind my house. I live on Comanche Trace Drive. I have a ranch right behind my backyard. I walk out of my backyard every day. I see beautiful vacant property back there. I fully understand somewhere in the future that property is going to be developed. I knew that when I bought the lot and built the house. So I have sympathy for, you had this beautiful setting in your backyard and you love it. You'd like for it to be there, but you knew when you bought that property and built a house on the backside that that wasn't possibly going to happen. I'm very uncomfortable with the zoning code exceptions and change request. I'm really uncomfortable with that. I like what Bruce said. Personally, I'm not ready to approve this based on all these zoning code setbacks and reductions and everything until we see a little bit more detail of the cluster and how this impacts, because it's like Tony said, once you open that door's open. Once you give one developer the ability to reduce 0 lot lines and setbacks and everything, you have a hard time turning the next developer down. I've always been of that opinion when we make decisions here at the P&Z. I'm also uncomfortable with the number of homes, the number of residences are gonna be in there.
The density is actually not that high overall.
I understand.
Just as R1, your average would be 6 to 8 units per acre, and they're sitting about 3.5 units per acre.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just giving you my thoughts. I'm uncomfortable with 1,700 residential units and 400 and something acres. I'm just giving you my thoughts. I personally would like to make a motion that we postpone this until we have an opportunity to get into detail with all the changes that are being requested of the zoning code. We just received it. I met with you on Monday. That's the first time I heard anything about any 0 lot lines, about any reduced setbacks, and I'm just not comfortable at this point, I'm not uncomfortable granting the zoning as is, but I'm uncomfortable granting the zoning with all the 0 lot lines and reduced setbacks that they're requesting. And at this point, I'm just not, I could make 1 or 2 motions. I can make a motion that we postpone this until we fully understand what these setbacks are gonna do in these 0 lot lines, or I can make a motion that we approve it without any of the changes they requested to the zoning code to be able to come back for exceptions once we see the plans. I need a little guidance. I'm not exactly sure how we handle this.
Right.
I don't know. What are my options?
Say, if we're gonna table it, I think the developers and staff certainly need direction on what are we trying to answer? So you're wanting to see a lot layout. I know some of the question there is how tight that's gonna be looked at versus the preliminary plat, because it's not a plat approval. They wouldn't be specifically tied to that lot layout, but that might answer the questions on why the reduced setbacks is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess that's a little part of it. My bigger concern is exceptions to this zoning, the subdivision zoning code that they're asking for, going to 0 lot lines and reduced setbacks that, again, once we make that decision.
Right.
It's there. And someone wants to develop, there's 5 projects on the books right now, and someone that hasn't done their, final platting or whatever, and they see that we've granted all these changes to the zoning code, that they're gonna come in and, I understand the reasoning behind it. I'm just not comfortable.
Right.
I was trying to follow protocol. I didn't want to
No, go
scroll
ahead.
through and ask whether we could clarify or not. Is that worthy?
Yes, sir.
Well, no, I'm being.
No,
respectful
you
to
can make it whatever questions are
commission.
coming.
Yeah, gosh. So if you look at the various requests that we have made in regard to zoning and setbacks and whatnot, they have to do with what we're trying to do here is instead of saying the entire community will be 60 by 100-foot lots, period. We don't want to do that. We want to say we would like to see, some 3/4 acre lots. And by the way, some pretty small alley-loaded, single-family detached homes, and maybe even some small or higher density townhouses. So if you're doing a townhouse or an alley-loaded, single-family home, the way those, and by the way, they both work out in the R2 district, except if you're building alleys, for example, to get the density to work correctly, you wind up having a pretty narrow space. You've got a garage door on this side and a garage door on that space that's 30 feet from face of garage to face of garage. Within that, there's 20 feet, which is your fire lane, or it's actually your driveway, but that 20-foot segment is required so that you can get fire apparatus through. So, which in turn means on either side of that driveway, you can either have a 5-foot setback behind the easement, or I'm sorry, behind the edge of pavement, or you can have a 0-foot easement on the back of a 30-foot wide alley. I'm sorry if this is sounding too abstract, but it sounds like you've done enough of this that it sounds like you're very knowledgeable about this.
I understand what you're saying. I would like to visually see it.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
My concern, as I said before, in the planning and zoning, when we grant exceptions,
Yeah.
or when we grant variances from the zoning, our neighborhood, our subdivision zoning code, it's for you today.
Right.
But it's also for the next guy that comes along, and it makes it very, very tough for us to turn someone down. And it would be much easier for me, speaking for myself, not for anybody else up here, to be able to look at look at some actual preliminary plat lots and house design and what it's gonna look like before I.
What we're charged with is changing.
No, we're charged with that, Clip. We're also, what they're requesting is variances to that zoning code in the approval process.
But that's not included in here.
Oh, sure it is.
Or we hope it is.
Yes, it is. It doesn't show
I
it
guess
there, but
the
presentation has a whole list of variances.
And they're different. I mean, you all asked about my experience before. So in other places, when you tackle projects like this with problems like this, sometimes your local government, or it's mandated by the state, of course. There's a state government, and then a municipality implements planning tools. And there is something that you're well aware of, planned unit development. Okay, got that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in other places, you can do things that are, what I'm familiar with, that I've done a lot of, is something called a specific plan. And a specific plan means your city, this gentleman mentioned the city's general plan. You've got your 2050 vision, and it spells out what's happening in the town. And then if we want to build our project here, and we want to do something that we think is really special, or, in this case, a little bit distinctive, you put down something called a specific plan on that site. And what you're saying is, if we're building on this site, or if, in order to do what we'd like to do, we are going to request these zoning changes. And in effect, you're codifying those changes for the site, right? But it's very clear, when you read the document, it says, this is the specific plan for the Smith property. The Smith property allows you to do these 10 things. And by the way, the reason.
That I understand.
Well, no, what I'm getting at, though, is it also says the reason we can do these 10 things are these, all these reasons that have been brought to the planning commission, appointed and elected officials, but it's stuck on the site. And I see your dilemma, and your question is, well, what happens if somebody just does the PD down the road and says, we want to do the same thing? And the reality, though, is again, this gentleman mentioned, if you're trying to meet the housing needs of the city, and you don't want to grade your site flat, we have to have flexibility just to get it to fit. I mean, short of grading it all out, and that's not our plan. We don't want to grade it all out.
I completely understand. I understand your dilemma. My dilemma is I'm presented with a challenge that I'm just not.
So yeah, I think if the lot layout answers your questions on how those reduced setbacks are gonna play out through the development, we could bring that back, or you could actually request that they bring that directly to council, so the council can see that, or if you wanna table it and have that come back, you can. Or if you wanna amend this or add different conditions, we can kinda talk through some of those specifics, but I'm not, does that answer your question?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, my preference would be, I'd like to see the lot layout. I'd like to table this until we can see the lot layout and see what the setbacks do. And a question I have is, I understand you want to have different zero lot lines and setbacks and things that are different from what our subdivision code says. Does that allow you to increase your density in the development? Does that allow you to?
No, not particularly. It's not done for that reason. The way that we look at the planned development district is exactly what Nick is saying. It's a specific plan for this property, right? And as we talked about the topography and making these neighborhoods really fit within that, and again, not having a crystal ball and saying, we understand the need, we see what the market is, we understand what Kerrville wants, what is certainly a deficit in available housing here for teachers, for doctors, for nurses, and for, people that are working in the community. And we're trying to fulfill that need as we see it today. But as the gentleman said, the project isn't gonna get built overnight.
Sure.
It's gonna take 10 years, and it will go through a variety of changes as the market changes. Maybe there's a recession, maybe there isn't a recession, nobody has a crystal ball to
Right,
project. all these
and I appreciate that, I understand all
I
that.
know you do. We're all realists, and we're trying to be
Yeah.
as pragmatic as we can, and I can appreciate the fact that you see all these changes, say, well, my goodness, and all the times I've sat here, I've never seen anybody actually go through and do that much stuff. Well, the reason that we did it is because we actually read it line by line by line, and very carefully in thinking about how to provide flexibility so that we could get the best that we can in terms of really creating something special. It wasn't a blanket saying we're gonna do zero
Well,
lot
and
line.
I appreciate that. I'm just, I totally understand. It's a great plan, and I tend to agree with a lot of the thinking here. It's a very ambitious, ostentatious plan for Kerrville, Texas. But we don't know what, Kerrville, Texas is not gonna be 25,000 people in 2 years or 3 years. It's gonna be more, and in 10 years, it's gonna be more, and that's inevitable. We can't do anything about it. We can manage the development based on our available water and road and infrastructure and things like that, which that's what you guys are charged to do, and I know you do a very good job at it. But it would be nice to take a look at what these changes in the codes are gonna look like.
But, I hear what you're saying, and it's kind of like you want to see the end before we're able to start. So as a process, as you more than well know, and you articulated it several times, the first part is to get the land use agreed. Once we know that the land use is what it is, then we go to platting it to fit exactly what the land use is that we're asking all the gentlemen to approve.
I have no issues with your land use. I have no issues whatsoever with your land use. My issue is with the subdivision code changes, which we just redid.
So so can I suggest as an idea,
Speak for the opposition, they've had, can I just
He's,
say one word?
he's not being
No, I know, but
opposition, he's just,
I think I understand what you're saying,
okay. then-
is Mike is not thinking about this 487 acres. He's thinking, if we approve zero lot line, 40-foot high townhouses here today, then somebody can say, why can't I do
Well,
that?
no question about it. That's-
I mean,
that's exactly right.
and that's he's thinking about the city of Kerrville and not about this development, which I think is good, and I think there needs to be some kind of protection for future developments if you decide to have zero lot lines in here. But I agree, and I think everybody in here agrees that they're speaking for the subdivision that's 487 acres, and they're speaking for the city of Kerrville.
Right.
Do we want to do all the changes they're
So I think-
requesting.
I think the answer to that is every planned development district that's asking for this level of request is going to have to provide this level of presentation to show why they're asking for these. So other PDs that we've had have not gone to this level of detail because their development plan fit those setbacks. And it's a different development, it's a different plan.
Oh, and I agree.
Most
I
of
mean,
Comanche Trace
don't
is a-
disagree with you. I think the plan on its base is a good plan.
Most of Comanche Trace is a planned development district.
I'm not comfortable approving all the changes that they're requiring.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. I would like to have more information, I'd like to see more detail, I'd like to know exactly how this is gonna look. So, and I mean, I can open it up, if there's a motion for to approve this as presented, make the motion. We can second it and see if it passes.
We approved zoning change on it.
I'm sorry?
We just approved the zoning that they're asking for without all the changes to the zoning code?
If you want us to look at the specific sections that they've, in that document that they have, we can certainly go through those.
Going through them, Drew, doesn't help me.
No, what I'm saying is, if you're not comfortable with the setback, the site design
My
regulations,
question was, can we approve only the zoning change and nothing with the development?
Can we
No,
approve, what
the-
they're
the plan
asking for
development
is the
is-
zoning, the different, the you know, the R2, can we approve this as presented, set aside the changes they want to make to the zoning code and revisit that in the future? Is that something we can do?
to some extent, yes. So what you can do is, based on the draft that they have, you could strike the site design and development standard section that amends the setbacks and approve everything else.
That's what I'd like to do. And
That's what I'm trying
That's
to
only
get
part
to.
of what you're, exactly. There's a whole lot more that you're rejecting that would still be included.
The public hearing's closed.
Yeah.
Exceptional.
So, yes, you can amend this. We can go line by line, or if you just want to take that section out and come back and review that at a later date. Sorry.
Sorry, Ken Brown. Everyone hates lawyers, especially at this time. Look, we're willing to go forward with the PDD without the design regulations, and we will go for those during the planning process. So at this point, we would respectfully request that you approve it without the design regulations or considerations that you're uncomfortable with. And we will just seek variances later during the preliminary plan or the planning process. I do want to make one appeal, because you are clearly, you've done this a lot, and especially you, Chair. I feel like you could make a distinction between this, the regulations that we're asking for, and somebody that comes in with a 100-acre plat that's flat and they're just, they're just racking and stacking. I think you could make a distinction between what we're requesting as a variance and the next guy. And you're right, he's gonna ask for it. But you can say that it was done in connection with everything else they did. The open spaces and the clustering and, all that sort of stuff, the park. I mean, I think you can make that distinction. I get it that you can't conceptualize it right now and you want to. So we would request, well, first of all, we would request that you approve it as we submitted it, but it doesn't look like you're comfortable. So in the alternative, take out the design standards that you're not comfortable with, but the PDD document is the zoning that we're requesting. You can't just say take the whole agreement out, because this is the PDD. This is our zoning district. So I guess what we're requesting tonight is to go forward and take out what you're uncomfortable with. Thank you.
Where's Mike? When we need him?
Yeah, where is Mike? He's gone, isn't he?
He went-
So the development standards that you guys were referencing would be section 3. So if you wanted to approve it excluding section 3, that approves the land use as presented in the PD, And they can come back and amend that at a later date, to the plating, or with the plating process concurrent.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that gets you the ability to see it in the context of how it's intended. And that's, so it's not abstract. This is why we want it, because it is specifically to achieve this particular goal, and then it's not an abstraction. But we can't plat until we get the process going, you understand?
And that allows them to keep moving the project forward.
But have you looked at all of the other
Yes.
questions they're asking and?
How about the short-term rental exclusion?
You know,
How about that?
I'm,
All we hear, for 2 times you've been here, all night is on short-term rental. People are getting up, and here, they carve out.
The public hearing is closed.
yeah, Tony, the public hearing is closed, there's no more discussion, but I can tell you from my perspective, that is a marketing issue. If you build a subdivision, where in the covenants and restrictions in the subdivision, you have the right to do a short-term rental, you know when you buy. That is not my problem, that is their problem to sell that product. And if someone doesn't want to move into a subdivision where there is a short-term rental built into the system, they won't move in there. So that's really not, to me, that's not an issue. That's a marketing issue for these guys, but.
Drew, if we make these exceptions on this zoning for this subdivision, does that mean that they're changed for everyone, or does everyone have to
No,
go through that
that
process?
is only for this planned development.
Just makes it way easier for someone to come in and say, well, you granted them those exceptions. We've had that happen before. And I know every project is specific to the project.
Right.
And listen, at the end of the day, I'm gonna do what I think is right, and I'm gonna make the recommendation I think is right, and then it can go, they can appeal it, and they can go to city council and do whatever they wanna do. But I need to do what I think is right. At this point, I'm not comfortable with I'd really like to see a more I'm not comfortable with just looking at everything there, not seeing the lots, not knowing how many residences are gonna be there.
How far along y'all on the plat process? I mean, y'all haven't even started, I'm assuming.
No, we haven't started the planning process. From the master planning stage.
It's something, and that's what they're saying, they're not gonna have that for us to look at, essentially, unless they get the use that they want, so that they can spread it around how they want to. They don't have the plan right now, in my mind. I feel this is what you're saying, y'all don't have the actual plan or how this is happening.
We've done a lot of conceptual work. The point is, it follows the land use plan, right? So once you agree the land use, then we can show you, and we're happy to have the conditionality built to the plating, so that the issue of setbacks applies to when we come in for a plat and say, here's.
So you have all the different zoning, that you're looking for in here under the R2, you have the village concept, you have all those concepts, you already know that.
Yes, but there's still, Mr. Chairman, there's some of them that are just for, it's also, we're looking at as an overall envelope of possibilities. Not that every single one is absolutely in the plan at the
Gotcha.
moment. It's
No,
a
I
possibility of it, right?
totally understand that, but there's a there's a concept of 1,700 units, 1,700 residential units.
Correct.
You have that concept.
Yes.
You know where all those residential units are gonna go
Approximately.
in each one of these sections. That's what I would like to see. I mean, I don't need to see a plat. I'd like to see, and I think that has a lot to do with zoning. I mean, I'm definitely uncomfortable with the changes in the zoning, which we can waive and they can come back and ask for in the future. I'd really like to know, this is such a huge plant development. And it's gonna, as everyone has said, this has great impact on this city. And before I'm willing to pass this forward, I really would like to have some more, that's all I'm saying. I need more information, that's all I can say.
Okay,
And we just want to make sure that we're bringing back the right information, okay? So, as you said, I think we can allocate the units per phase, per pod, and have a conceptual layout
That'd be great.
as to what it looks like. And I think we're willing to attach that to the PDD as an exhibit, as a conceptual plan. So we can do that, knowing that, you know, this lot right here might be here. Okay.
That's not an issue. I'm more concerned with the number of units, where they're gonna be in each section than I
Okay.
am where the lot is.
We can do that. And look, we want your full blessing on the whole PDD. I mean, we don't want to take out these standards. We want to show you why they're necessary. So we'll come back and show you.
We table
Table.
any more information.
Table.
I'll say, public hearing's closed, I'm sorry. I'm gonna make a motion that we table this until they come back to us with more information on the location of the units and the number of houses and the things like that. Where they are, I'd really like to get a little setback information, especially off the Comanche Trace residents and,
Okay.
and,
When is June 2nd? Instead of tabling it, can you continue it to the next meeting? Because we have been doing this work.
it's the same thing, right, Drew? We're not making a decision tonight.
Right. A table is not,
You would continue it to the next meeting.
okay, I just want to be clear.
Continue, I make a motion, we continue, well, let me ask for a motion, I don't wanna make a
I'll
motion.
make the motion, continue to the next meeting.
With the condition that we see allocation of,
Detailed concept plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second.
have a motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. That motion passes. We appreciate everyone that was here tonight, we appreciate your input. Understand that we live in Kerrville just like you do, I live in Comanche Trace, we're trying to do what's best for the city.
Mike, that's what I appreciate. You're thinking of the whole city. That's the.
Wait, we're not done yet, boys.
Abram, did you vote for that?
Yeah, well, table.
All right, sorry, I was just making sure.
It was unanimous. What else we have, Drew? I'm extreme, I love the project, but I'm extremely,
Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys can clear out kind of quickly, we still have further business. Thank you.
I'm uncomfortable with the effect this is gonna have. I think these guys have a good plan, I think they've really got something good in mind, but I'm concerned of opening the door to, and it's not gonna be 5,000 people, it'll be lucky to be 3,000 people, it's gonna be over 5 years, 6, 7 years, but it's,
Not everybody that buys this home.
no, most people are buying, they'll be mixed, they'll be families, but they'll also be,
Guys, can y'all
still
go out
moving here, you
Can
still
y'all go out
got
in
to
the
make a
lobby?
living. What do you, you're a builder, what do you think?
I mean, me too. I mean, I'm born and raised here. My parents were born and raised here, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Residents and. Thank you. The city's never grown at a rapid rate ever, you know. I mean, I think this stuff kind of comes and goes. I think they got a long way to go.
I don't think there's 1,000 families ready to move.
Well, and again, this is a 5-year, this is probably a 5-year. You're a builder, this is my concern.
Thank you, guys.
What do? They build the road?
All right. Sorry about that, guys.
They build the road first, or they put the sewer in?
First thing we've got is Steve and who else went with you? Jason, one of our inspectors, went out and posted these on all the properties.
Very well appreciated, I saw every one of them. I made a suggestion to Steve, but besides that, I really like them. You need much stronger posts.
Probably. We just wanted to start with these so that it was something we could get quick turnaround. Our public information office, I think I sent him the text and said, make it Kerrville 2050 colors, and this is what he brought back, so it's beautiful. And it is, like we talked about, it is kind of generic. It just says there is a public hearing, go to the city website, QR code, if they want to just scan it.
I like it, I mean, notice of public hearing is all you really need to see.
It just, the point was to get their attention. And we didn't want to have to redo the signs every time, because that's just gonna add more timeline to our application process. So we've got those. If these work out well, we may look at something more like the metal frame real estate signs. We just want to kind of test the waters
I
first.
think the signs are great, because that's what you use on all the elections, but they make a much heavier
Heavier duty.
stand.
Oh, okay.
But
still the
They're
same.
not that expensive.
I
It's
gotcha.
the same sign, they stick them in, the sign's gonna last,
Yeah.
the election signs will last for a month, so they'll be fine.
Okay, yeah, we'll check that out. Upcoming meetings, the next meeting is June 2nd. I don't know if you guys noticed, we've already published for the next meeting. We are moving P and Z up to 4 o'clock.
Oh, are we? I like that.
Most of our afternoon meetings are at 4 for most other boards, so trying to get consistency. I actually moved ZBA. ZBA used to meet at 3, we moved them back to 4, move you guys up to 4. The next meeting, I don't have it set in stone, but I would at least pencil it in on your calendar for a 2 o'clock meeting for a joint workshop with council for short-term
Good
rentals.
date?
Same meeting, same day,
Yeah, same day.
Oh, this day, 2 o'clock?
6/2.
June
Okay,
2nd.
cool.
You guys had talked about a workshop on short-term rental. Council's been talking about a workshop. City manager and I kind of talked about it and said, before we end up going 3 different directions.
Great idea.
Mr. Hoppy said, let's just have a joint workshop and sit down and discuss it together. I don't know what format that's gonna look like yet. It will be a workshop, so any public comment will be specific to that.
Where will the first one be?
I think it's going to be in here, but I don't know that for sure yet. Fitting everybody.
Council sit down.
I was gonna ask, you gonna sit up there or what?
We usually do more of a conference table setup down here, but I don't think that's gonna accommodate all 12 and staff. So it may be more of a, I don't know, we'll figure it out. All right, Martin in the back is pretty good at helping figure out layouts for the cameras and mics, and we do have some limitations, but, and I don't know how much public dialogue will open up. So we'll be discussing that. As of right now, it's calendared for June 2nd at 2 o'clock to give us some time to talk. And then we do have 3 items on that next agenda, so. Well, 4 including this one, yeah. So. And like I said, we moved it up to, the regular time from here on out will be 4 o'clock.
I like it.
Just keep it a little more consistent with all of our boards.
What do you think, man?
It was a quick one. That's good.